item on the agenda is the approval of minutes, May 16th, 2024. Comments, corrections, or revisions? This is for you guys?
Page 6, it's my only comment.
Is it?
Page 6.
What do you have on that? I only have 5 pages.
No, that's fine. All right.
Just wait to print it out.
This is under. Creameries, 31 Creamery Circle. The motion actually made by me. Last line of the motion, waive. Changes spelling W-A-I-V, is an I missing.
I wasn't sure on the next paragraph, the 2639. It seemed a little bit confusing, the wording. I'm not sure if there was a thing. The board reviewed the draft resolution of conditional approval and requested this to be listed on the May 16th, 2024 meeting. But this was the May 16th, 2024 meeting. And then on page 2, Healy Ford, vote by proper motion, it says for W.S. Healy Corporation, Healy. We have one too many Healys. Nothing personal.
Not related.
I know that. Any other comments or revisions?
On the first page, date for May 7th is 2/24, should be 2024. RDL voting 17.
Yes. Could date of the correspondence on the first line, or the motion. Other revisions? Not, can I have a motion to approve the minutes of May 16, 2024 as revised this evening?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? The other minutes that we have listed on the agenda will be addressed at a later date. Moving on, we have a possible extension or abandonment of applications pursuant to town code. The first one being Lordan Enterprises LLC, otherwise known as Northern Bear Pet Food Supply. We have a letter dated October 7th, 2025, addressed to the planning board. Dear members of the board, please let this letter serve as our request for a 6-month extension of the conditional amended site plan approval for the above referenced project. Our office is currently working on a revised plan addressing the town consultant's comments. Should you have any questions or require anything further, please do not hesitate to contact this office. Very truly yours, Nicholas Rugnetta of Petrozak and Fow Engineers. Sean.
I don't have anything further, Mr. Chairman. I can tell you that if we're granted a 6-month extension, that'll bring it to your April 16th, 2026 meeting.
April 26th?
April 16th, 2026.
2026. Comments from the board?
I'm good.
If not, could I have a motion to grant the 6-month extension to April 16, 2026 as requested?
So moved.
Phil, second by Seamus, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Next one being 17M Flex Building. From John Capello, engineer, attorney. Dated October 6, 2025, addressed to town engineer. Dear Chairman and planning board members, this email confirms that on behalf of my client, we are granting an extension to the planning board to consider this application through the end of November 2025. Thank you, John Capello, Esquire. We don't need to take action on this.
I don't believe you do. Mr. Capello's in the audience if you want to have a word with him.
Where are we hiding it?
He's all the way in the back.
Oh, I see you there.
How do you know this?
Do you have anything to add to that, John?
No, we should be resubmitting soon, and we had asked that we would grant the
Right.
extension for the board, so we're fine granting it through the end of November, and hopefully we'll be on the next agenda. If not, we'll continue it.
To extend the,
Yes.
okay, very good, thank you.
So what we'll do, Mr. Chairman, is we'll put this on your November 20th meeting as a control date.
Okay. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing for MC3 Ventures LLC, Hugh McKenzie, formerly known as 2639 17M Building, 920 Associates LLC. 12-1-54, it's an application for amended site plan approval for an automobile retail and service business on 0.65 acres along New York State Route 17M in an HC zone, AQ3 overlays. Do we have anyone from the public here for this public hearing? I don't see any hands going up. Okay. Well, first thing, do we have the applicant or their consent? Would you like to come up and make a real quick explanation of what you're proposing to do? Both for us and for the public if they're interested.
Okay. So there was already a site plan approved for a storage building, but we're gonna change it and we're gonna have auto repair and service. And right. So pretty much it's an auto repair and service building for the same site plan that was already approved.
How many employees do you envision having?
No more than 4. Right now it's just gonna be 2.
2, but up to 4?
Yes.
As far as auto repair, how many vehicles do you envision storing on the property between, over the course of any given day? Do you know at this point, or?
I would say maybe between 4 and maximum of 10 people.
Between 4 and 10?
I would say between 4 and 8, sorry. 4 to 8 people.
4 and 8, that works. First thing I'm gonna do is, unless you have anything more you wanna say at this point, I'll let our engineer comment on the project.
Right.
Sean?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this was discussed at your October 2nd meeting. At that time, there was an initial presentation and the board handled seeker. It's listed this evening, as you know, for a public hearing. Just so the board is aware, this was originally approved as a contract for storage. The applicant is looking to purchase it and bring in retail sales for automobiles as well as repair. Both permitted uses in the zoning district, so this is an amended site plan approval for this building.
Are there any physical changes being made on the outside of the building? Windows, doors, you know, as far as, you have 2 showroom vehicles on the parking lot.
Right.
But is there anything different on that wall facing out to 17M that you're intending to do?
Not facing 17M.
Nothing facing 17M.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman, unless the board has questions.
Okay, well, I'll open up to the board.
I have no questions.
Jeremy?
Just where you have these 2 cars parked, is that just grass or are you planning on?
So, we were here last time and, you know, we'd have to put in for a variance for those 2 spaces in front, which, if we choose to do so, we'll do so down the road. But that would have to be a full, lot.
Got it. Okay, that was good. Thanks.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, for the members that weren't present at the last meeting, it was discussed and determined that this may be outdoor storage. It would be prohibited, so the applicant wanted to essentially bifurcate the application. They're gonna take that outdoor storage and display out of this application.
So it'll be removed from
And
the
if they
plan.
determine they want it in the future, they go through that process.
Okay, fair enough.
What did you decide with the encroachment?
Oh, yes, so what we actually thought about doing is turn the building, because one of the thought was, the way the building is, the the bays would be facing the back. So when I spoke to the engineer, and initially we were thinking that there was enough space, so we had the 30 feet, right, so what we're gonna do is turn the building. So instead of having the 56 across, you would have the
40 will be across.
40 across, and that would give us the 30 space.
That's gonna have some cascading impacts to the site plan. I would say that the applicant should submit that plan as soon as possible, if that's what they want to do.
With the 56 deep, it's gonna change the parking area and
Right.
potentially in front of the yard. And as far as that encroaching adjacent building, what is happening with that? They're in 30-foot side setback, that adjoining dwelling.
Right,
What is
so-
the arrangement between you and your neighbor on that?
Well, we
Yeah, fine.
got one board
Oh, you own both?
We both
Okay, I'm
have
sorry.
one lot, so the plan is still to move the line over, so we know we'd have to go before the zoning board for a variance for it. We can either do that and for the variance, or turn the building, so then we wouldn't have we'd still have the 30 separate.
Right.
So from talking to the engineer, we'd have to put it together and present it again to say which way works better with still maintaining the amount of parking that's required.
Right.
Or, if not, then we would leave it the way it is and go for the variance for the 30.
Side yard setback.
Right.
Thank you.
If you could just refresh my memory, the bays to get the cars in and out, where are they gonna be now?
So the bays are actually sitting in the back right now. So that's one of the reasons why we were gonna do, we were thinking about the display in the front, right? So right now the bays are in the back.
All right,
The thought was if we were gonna turn the building, we would have the bays facing the driveway coming up, so it still wouldn't be facing 17.
Yep.
So it would be facing the driveway coming up, and then the parking would be in the back. So we'd have to kind of figure it out and see, would we still get enough parking in there? If not, we would leave it the way it is and still do the bays in the back.
yep.
So the options are either go for the variance for the 30 feet setback, or if we turn the building, we'll see if there's enough parking, but if not, we can get enough parking in there.
Okay, thanks.
Seamus?
No question.
Diana?
No, I covered it all last time.
Frank?
Lee, just one question for the applicant. Is there a component of sales with this project now, or just service?
Both.
Both? Okay.
Is that an issue, Frank?
No, it just wasn't clear. I didn't hear it before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if there's no other comments or concerns from the board, I think we'd like to open,
Yeah, okay, go ahead. I was just gonna remind you about that.
that's it, open up the public hearing. I need a motion to do so.
I'll place a motion.
Diana, second by?
I'll second.
Okay, Marty, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Public hearing is open. If anyone from the public wishes to comment on this application, or if you wish to see what the plan looks like, feel free to come on up. Neil?
So I just have a question. Is it possible for somebody to park in front of that building? Like, I know when I generally drop my vehicle off to get serviced, generally Sue's right behind me to pick me up, but she's parked over here and then I walk over to it. So is it possible for somebody to park in front of the building to pick somebody else up? I know we did no storage
The
out there.
plan shows no parking in front of the building. The plan shows a curved driveway coming in,
Okay.
going along the side of the building, so you would be able to, once you jump the curb, I would imagine.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or concerns? If not, could I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just, given the fact that the site plan sounds like it's in a state of flux, I don't know if the board wants to consider maybe adjourning the public hearing, because what'll happen is you'll start a clock on when you need to make a decision. So it's up to the board. I know you didn't really receive any public
It would
comments.
seem to me that, we should close the public hearing when we have definitive
Final plans?
plans.
Okay, in that case, Could I have a motion to hold the public hearing open until we have more documentation to work with?
So moved.
Revised plans perhaps. Seamus, second by?
I'll second.
Diana, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against?
And that's until we have the final.
Right, so you're gonna work with your engineer and get together with him, decide what you're doing as far as the physical location of the building and whether you need to go to the ZBA. And once we have a set of plans in front of us, whether it's this set and it's the ZBA or you're changing the plans to modify, comments that were made, then we could continue the public hearing. Well, it's open, it's not closed. We didn't close it. It's gonna be a continuance.
Do you
We're gonna
understand
put back
what
on
you
the
need to
calendar
do?
again,
Right.
those mailings and all that stuff have to be done again and all that.
The answer is no.
Okay.
But you do want to get together with your engineer sooner rather than later.
And come up with a final plan.
Neil,
I just asked,
We had to realize-
is this adjourned to a certain date, or is it, or do we have to renotice this?
how do we want to handle that?
You can adjourn to a certain date if you'd like. I would suggest perhaps, do you think you have the plans in 2 weeks?
Maybe a month.
So
First meeting in December?
First
before
meeting in
most?
December?
Yeah.
December 6th or something like that?
Just give me a minute, I'll take a look.
Sounds good.
Yes, 4th.
4th, December 4th. Okay, so we modify that motion to adjourn the meeting to December 4th.
I'll make the motion.
Marty, second by.
I'll second.
Seamus, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. December 4th.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is Edward J. Lemko Drive Warehouse Offsite Improvements, 20-1-148 and 149. We have an application for amended site plan for modification of an existing parking lot on 30 plus or minus acres along New York State Route 17A in the CO zone, AQ3 street corridor, water supply, watershed, and scenic road border overlays. And tonight, we're here to take a look at some revised plans, particularly the parking area. Welcome.
Good evening, Ross Waywood, Engineering and Surveying Properties. I'm here with Al Mulred, the applicant. We were here before you in March. This is really kind of an off-site impact or mitigation of part of the Lemka Drive warehouse that is in front of the Village of Florida Planning Board. That we were here in March explaining what we were looking to do. I'll re-explain. As part of that project, they asked us to better define the through lane and the traffic flow on Remy Plaza Drive as it comes through the site. We proposed an island to separate the parking area from the through lane. The little tips of the island here are in the town. Also, as part of that, I think we were asked to add some additional islands internal to the parking lot to be more consistent with what the code is in the town of Goshen. So we've added some additional islands to provide further breaking up the parking and better traffic flow.
Those islands are going to be vegetated how?
They're gonna be grassed islands. I did talk to Al, we could put a tree in them.
Mr. Chairman, I think the code requires the upland tree.
Isn't there a requirement?
Yeah, there is.
Okay.
So we would be glad to do that.
Be compliant with the code requirement. Very good.
Other than that, that's really the extent of it. We had got our neg deck in front of the village in August. And submitted here late last month to get the approval here so we can go back. to the village and get our conditional final approval for the entire project.
Very good, thank you. Sean?
I did not provide you with a report this time because this is a minor project. You determined it was a minor site plan back in March, and you also waived the public hearing on this matter. Essentially, at that time, and the reason you haven't seen the applicant in over 6 months is they were waiting for the village of Florida to conclude seeker. Now that that is concluded, now they're here to wrap up this site plan so they can go back to the village of Florida and wrap up the site plan in that jurisdiction. So I don't have any technical comments on anything which you already raised, Mr. Chairman.
Comments from the board? Phil?
The crosswalk from the handicap spot or parking spaces to the
Yep.
building?
Yep.
Is that gonna be painted on the?
Yes, correct.
And that'll be maintained and, is it, wears out?
Yep, actually, Al had repainted this since the original survey, so we had to go relocate it. So he does repaint it.
And what's the distance approximately?
From the 24 feet from that to the
To the building?
sidewalk, yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Eric? Marty?
Why did the village request to get the parking reconfigured?
But it was really about this island. Because if you've been in Remy Plaza, you go through, it's really kind of wide open. And a lot of traffic in front of the gym. There are concerns about cars just pulling forward into the travel lane. So we talked about providing an island to provide that separation.
So that physical barrier.
Yep, physical barrier. Thanks.
Go ahead.
Seamus? No questions. Diana?
No, that explains it.
Okay. Which brings us to you, Katie. What is our next action?
Do you have a resolution or
If you could authorize the
It
resolution.
hasn't been, no, something, I haven't seen anything.
No, because the seeker wasn't concluded yet, so the board didn't take any action.
I didn't know if we had one
No, Mr. Chairman.
in the bullpen. Okay. Could I have a motion then to authorize council to prepare a resolution of conditional approval for this application?
I'll move it.
Eric, second by
I'll second.
Phil. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against?
Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Next item on the agenda is 114 Hartley Road Battery Energy Storage Site, 12-1-2.3. We have an application for amended site plan approval and special permit for a Tier 2 battery energy storage system on 31.2 plus or minus acres along Hartley Road, a CO zone with AQ6 floodplain and ponding, street corridor, and water supply watershed battery energy storage overlay district overlays. And expended part 3 EAF.
I'm recusing myself.
Giovanni and Neil. Your presence is requested.
You're good.
Yes, sir. That's right. Thank you.
All good?
All good.
All right. It's been a while since we've been here. Last time we were in front of the board was around in June. There's a new face. I'm Travis Rosenkrantz from Craig Manning, civil engineer on behalf of the applicant, Newlands Energy. We also have their attorney and their fire suppression expert consultant in the front row as well. So we have a couple goals for this evening. One is to give an overall summary of several of the site plan updates, where we are with the zoning board, and then also walk through and identify some of the discussion points that was identified in the TDE's recent review letter. So that those discussion points are primarily related to the EAF and advancing with the request to have a coordinated public hearing. So really, overall, the site plan is summarized with shifting of the battery units westward. That was primarily a direct comment that was initiated by the zoning board to reduce the number of variances. So consequential to that change, we were able to reduce the number of variances, and that request was actually presented to the zoning board in August. I did not attend that, but that went very well. And we followed through the request to have the coordinated public hearing with the various boards.
Could you explain what those variances were and how you mitigated that by shifting the,
So shifting west allowed us to have a larger separation between the actual two parcels here. Each one of these units are on a parcel. So we were able to eliminate the side yard setback. And I'm looking at Gallic because he was the one that actually presented to the zoning board, so I'm getting thumbs up. So we were able to reduce, or actually remove those two side yard setbacks between the storage units.
so did we only move the ones on the northwest side, shift those to create a larger?
So just to correct it, so previously we had needed 6 variances,
Yes.
3 for each site. There was the internal setback, there was a front yard setback, and then of course the road frontage, because we're using the existing frontage and there's no way to get to Hartley Road from back here. So what we were asked to do at the zoning board was try to reduce the variances so they're granted the minimum amount practicable. So one thing that we did is we moved the lot line up, so we reduced the need for the front yard variances totally. And then the batteries, we shifted them as much as we could while still maintaining the 100-foot buffer in order to try to reduce the internal lot line setback. So now we only need 4, whereas before we needed 6.
Thank you.
That helped me out, thank you. So everything else, as far as gravel area, storage units, fencing, essentially we picked those up, moved them west. Naturally, the grading, everything else as far as access, gate access, that all shifted as well. The other main site modification was a result of our coordination with Orange and Rockland. Previously, we were proposing 12 utility poles. We've reduced those to 8 utility poles, and that's primarily all located here on site, and then it would be underground conduit to the point of interconnection, which is off-site. So that's a key component because we've reduced the actual number of poles that would be included with the system.
Why did you get 12 in the first place?
It was going to be entirely above ground from the storage units through the site and then off-site. Through further discussion, we found that Orange and Rockland had already planned for some sort of expansion, and there is a conduit on their pole, underground conduit, that allows that for a connection to the point of interconnection. So they're essentially, we're reducing the number of poles that they require.
Now, obviously, the town code would much prefer to see fewer
Yeah,
poles and overhead wires as well.
correct.
Right.
Yeah, so the last point, underground wiring, the last pole is, this really shows how shaky it is. The last pole is right here. And then it's underground wire, underground conduit, all the way to, well, it's off-site. It's off-site on the other side of the trail. So that's a key component. I consider it a plus.
That conduit's already in place?
Not the conduit from the site to the pole. There's a pole at the actual pole. That goes from the pole.
It's currently not used.
Currently not used by O&R, yeah. It's a stub up. You can actually see it from Google Earth for those that are outside the Goshen area. So that was, again, that was the one major component as far as the connection advanced in our hiatus of attending planning board meetings. Overall, site-wise, that's the summary. The reason we were delayed getting on previous, I shouldn't say delayed, but we were preparing the HMA and the ERP to include with the submission to get us to the point that we're at today. So, I think site-wise, EAF-wise, that's really, we understand that there's going to be questions, and that's why we have Paul Rogers here, who was actually presented to this board as well. We do have a couple of items of clarification in the review letter. I think one, I know, Alec, we were talking about having the clarification with the town for the 100-foot buffer. That was included in Sean's recent, or the TDE's recent review. So we have that opportunity to discuss that with Mr. Leva, since he's in the audience. I don't know if this is the proper channel to do it, or we need to do that offline.
Right.
Could you just explain that again?
So the code has a requirement for a 100-foot buffer
Yeah,
for a battery storage unit proposed on a permitted lot if it neighbors a residentially zoned lot.
okay.
A key component, the residentially zoned lot is owned by Orange and Rockland. The 100-foot buffer, our interpretation is that that is an actual buffer and not intended to be fully forested, vegetated, screened. So now that and feel free to jump in, Alec, because you're more astute on the language, and
This aerial might help, because it shows the existing condition with some trees along the edge. So I think Sean's question that we were looking for clarification on is whether the current design as we have it is sufficient, which is basically, we have the 100-foot setback, there is existing trees that do screen it from off-site, but there are access drives existing in both proposed that will be within that 100-foot buffer. And what the code says is a 100-foot setback with wooded buffer.
Yeah.
And I think we meet that requirement because code doesn't say a 100-foot wooded buffer, which would mean all 100 feet have to be wooded, whereas this is 100 feet with a wooded buffer, which I think aligns with the code.
Okay,
So
this topic comes up on other parcels, other projects. I would just say if you could give me a written submission with this.
Sure.
I want to be consistent with other parcels,
Okay.
other projects.
perfect. So we'll have that as a prepared response for the recent comment letter.
Sure.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Would you like to weigh in on this?
Would you like me to weigh in on this?
Please.
Okay.
Your own restaurant.
So I think at the beginning of the applicant's presentation, they indicated the reasons they were here. And that's really to do with seeker and to possibly schedule a public hearing. Since you received a full application with revised plans, I've provided you with comments on those materials. I don't know if we want to get into those, but I will just address one of them because it could affect the variances that the applicant needs. So the applicant indicated about the 12 poles going to 8, and that's obviously an improvement. However, the way it's structured in your code is that the number of poles needs to be justified by the utility, right? So just having them say, yeah, that's good, is not, they're requiring those poles to be in place. So it has to be underground or at grade unless the utility requires it. We've run into this with other applications before. And that is identified in my memo. In terms of seeker and the EAF, you adopted a Part 2 EAF. The applicant submitted an expanded Part 3. There's really 3 areas that I wanted to talk to you about tonight. 2 of them, surface water and groundwater, are related. So you had some concerns when you prepared the Part 2 about potential contamination of surface water and groundwater. And the applicant indicated that the hazardous materials will not enter the water system, both water system, surface water and groundwater, since the emergency response plan doesn't recommend water for direct firefighting. And I understand there's a low probability of that happening. However, under seeker, this would be potentially an irreversible impact with a high order of magnitude. So I think more than just one statement in an emergency response plan needs to be provided. I think in order for you to make that hard look and draw some conclusions, I think you need some other information from the applicant in terms of potential contamination of surface groundwater. The other item which I have, which I think is a lot easier for the applicant, is you had some concerns about potential impacts with athletic resources, primarily the visibility of this from the Heritage Trail. Right? The applicant provided you with a statement that it's not visible. I don't think that's good enough. I think that the applicant needs to provide you with some site photographs or some cross sections or something along those lines so you can confirm it, and/or you schedule a site visit to go out there and confirm it for yourself, perhaps with some flagging or something in place so you know what you're looking at.
And that's a seasonal aspect as well.
There is
Leaf on, leaf off.
Correct.
Going back to the use of water, fire suppression, we had a catastrophic failure. And we're saying we don't use water to put it out. We're basically saying we're gonna let it just burn itself out. It's gonna sit there and just burn until there's no more lithium or whatever to, is that correct?
Paul Rogers, ESRG. What we do is we try to tell the fire department to manage the incident, right? And we don't want them, we discourage them from using water, because the water's not gonna be effective. It is a watertight cabinet. To get the water on the inside is almost gonna be a futile effort for them to actually get the water on the inside. So, what we would like to do is, if they do have water, if they do have surrounding areas that may be heating up, and they can get that information through the BMS, and we address that in the new updated codes in New York State, where they have to have a subject matter expert available on the phone. That subject matter expert should be giving them the battery management system, which actually looks at the state of health of the batteries. So if the adjoining cabinet was heating up from heat transfer or something like that, we would want them to actually put a water fog line onto that. But when they do their initial testing, right, they have to validate that if it were to fail, it should not propagate to the adjoining.
You say when they do the testing.
So the wall manufacturers coming into New York State and want to use their product in New York State have to be listed to UL 9540, have to do testing, UL by National Recognized Testing Laboratory, but they do destructive testing where they actually put the thing on fire and validate that if this thing were to fail catastrophically, in that case, it would not propagate. And I do want to,
And if it were to fail catastrophically, excuse me, the heat that got generated within that encasement, right? Whatever you want to call it, the outside enclosure,
Yeah.
could any of the components inside melt and run? Any of the individual units or the batteries, the housing of the batteries themselves?
So I was up at the Warwick incident, which is pretty close to here. So yeah, there were gonna be components that will melt. I have not seen anything run outside the pad that they're on.
The can.
I haven't witnessed it myself.
Can
I don't know. I wouldn't say that that's a tough one. That's a hypothetical.
No, the reason I'm asking, because, if we're concerned about runoff or getting into groundwater, getting into surface water, even if we're not extinguishing it with water,
Yeah.
if there's other opportunities for the toxic or hazardous materials inside there to get out, can they find their way out of that enclosure?
Yeah, so any electrolyte that may be in there, which is a liquid, right, any electrolyte that's part of the battery, most of that will actually start to vaporize, and as a result of the vaporizer, will be burned off in the catastrophic failure. Just like a propane tank, right, when you have a propane tank, it's liquid in the inside of it, when we open it up and we actually consume those gases, and that's the concept behind what we're trying to do with the battery energy storage
Well,
system.
I mean, with a propane tank, usually it goes off, it goes into the atmosphere. It's open, right?
It is, it
I mean,
turns
this,
into gas.
it's contained, do we have?
Yeah, but what
is it
the
vented?
heat,
Is it-
like any liquid, when you have a heat, right, it's left to vaporize.
Right, but the vapor's gotta go somewhere.
Vapors, yeah, the vapors will be dissipating in the air. Sure. But it's probably gonna be consumed. If it's hot enough and we got a flame, it's gonna be consumed because they're flammable.
Let me, and I there was a lot of work put into what you submitted. And I spent a lot of time reading. On page 24 of your emergency response plan, you do say the lithium-ion batteries may release large quantities of flammable and toxic gas when undergoing failure impose an inhalation hazard. Now, NYSERDA has a paper that disagrees with that, says these systems are safe. EPA disagrees with NYSERDA. I have an August 2025 paper that says that there are concerns, safety concerns, the venting of, into the atmosphere of toxins. It seems to be an unsettled area. I will also say that EPA makes clear that between 2020 and 2025, or 2018 and 25, the number of incidences of these catastrophic events have been dramatically decreasing. So the industry seems to have paid attention to the fact that there were more than there needed to be catastrophic events. Having said all of that, we're faced with the situation that there could be an adverse event and there could be a release. I don't think there's any question about that. We need to look out for the welfare of the community. And what I've been able to ascertain from reading these materials, and you've made it clear, water doesn't work. You're talking about sparkers, some kind of spark mechanism?
Yeah, I want to give context to what you're reading at. So just like any fire, structural fire, car fire, wood fire, there's toxic gases that come off it. And that's what we're trying to get at that point. Right? We have to cover ourselves and make sure the firefighters will wear their SCBA. We don't want them to breathe any of that stuff in. That's a no-brainer. So that tells them, put on all your PPE, because there's going to be a toxic emission as a result of that, which like would be at any single fire out there. The other thing that you may be they're saying there is that if a failure were to take place before there actually is a fire event, and we've seen this, there could be a failure of the cell. There's no fire that takes place. The heating of the failure of the cell actually may emit some gases. That is the liquid electrolyte inside vaporizing. So vaporizing and it turns into a vapor, right? So that may be on the inside. Now, what they propose is they have a sparkler system. Since I told you it's flammable, the goal of that is to try to burn that off. The sparkler system should burn that off if it reaches the flow flammable limits. So if it's too lean to burn, it's not going to burn. If it's too rich to burn, it's not going to burn. So it's got to be right in the flammable range in order for it to actually get that in the burn. So some context in that is most of that stuff will stay in, but we have seen, right? You may even seen in your house some people who had a failure of a battery cell in their house, where they have this flammable gas that will come out for some of the consumer products that we see. So I'm not sure what your question is in relative to.
Well, I was clearing up the fact there is a risk.
There's always a risk. I would never come to you and say there's never a risk. There's a risk in everything that we do, all day long.
Right.
Yeah.
With that release of the vapor, is that gonna create a plume of sort? If so, does it migrate, or is it, I don't know.
Good question. It's a good question. That's a fair question, right? We looked at this. I sit on the National Committee, NFPA standard, 855, and we looked at this as a body ourselves, right, looking at these plumes. And we also have evidence where they have taken things that were fully on fire. Even the big incident that took place recently in California, right? The big one that took place with the Moss Landing, if you've been watching any of that. They had put monitoring equipment all over the place. As a matter of fact, in California, which was a pretty large one, bigger than what you had here in Warwick. But I'll keep it to Warwick. They did, the Orange County hazmat team put sensors around the perimeter of the fence, and they didn't get any reading. So there was no impact of that. This is all captured inside of the report that the New York State put out. They also did a water sample to take a look, and this was done by DEC. That also, they did not see anything that was impactful to humans as a result of the rain. They didn't put water on it, but the rain came down on them. So that was actually causing runoff as a result of that. And they wound up taking a look and taking samples of that. They did that also in Chemont, in Jefferson County, where there was an incident. They wound up taking gas samples at that one, where OFPC actually brought up their stuff, and they put it around the perimeter fence. But what I'm getting here is that we have not seen any impact outside the perimeter fence for humans. We have not seen anything that has actually left the perimeter fence as a result of the failure. So everything has stayed within the fence area itself. So we have not seen any of that, not only here in the United States, but around the world.
Thank you.
So the upshot is that there's a risk, it's a decreasing risk, given, looking historically back in recent years. What question to you, I think, if I recollect correctly, there are several statements where water would not be directly applied to the event. What does that mean, won't be directly applied?
Yeah, so what we're trying to do is, we're trying to keep the water out of the system itself, right? So what we mean is we would actually use it in a defensive way, if it's needed, right? It's all Incident Command making that decision. And they can use that water to spray on an exposure. So they want to make sure if the heat is transferring over to the exposure, you want to make sure that that one doesn't fail in the adjoining exposure. So they use that as a defensive strategy.
Cool things.
Just to capture heat, so the heat transfer is not going to be prevalent, and the water will actually cool it down.
Another question is water supply. This is 2.6 on page 15 of your emergency response plan. It says existing well on property to be converted to public water supply. What's happening there?
I think there was a conversation, I wasn't at the conversation, but my colleague was, in regards to the fire department. They went and addressed this at the fire department, about the water infrastructure and whether they, I mean, do you want to speak, because you were there, but
Yeah,
I can speak secondhand on it unless you want to
Sure.
speak firsthand on it.
Yeah, I'll just begin and then Travis says something to add. So we met twice with the Goshen Fire Department, most recently, 4 weeks ago. And, there was some discussion about whether or not, well, for one, I guess there's a public hydrant that currently exists on Hartley Road, which is, 2,500 feet away. There's a time period where, that it takes to set up a relay in the event that there is an incident, which is 10 to 15 minutes or so, for the fire department to do that.
I don't want to interrupt, but what public hydrant are we referring to?
My
There's no
understanding-
public water out there, that's why I'm curious.
My understanding connected to Amy's Kitchen, that there's a,
Below-
an accessible
below
hydrant that they can grab water from, is what I understood from the fire chief.
Off that 8-inch line?
So the conclusion, the chief will have to speak for himself, and I don't know if he's issued written comments or not, but, the conclusion of the chief is that he was satisfied with the environmental review plan, with the hazardous mitigation analysis, and he was satisfied that, that they would be able to access and set up their relay in sufficient time, to address any concerns in that regard. So that was how water was handled in that conversation, and that came from the chief.
Who would be the first responders, hazmat or the fire department?
The fire department was going to be the first responders for that. Hazmat could be called.
And they're, because you
what we
mentioned,
did-
you
yeah.
mentioned early on that the fire department would manage the property.
Yeah, the fire department's going to.
When hazmat comes in, does the fire department step
If
back
the
or they
incident
work in
command-
conjunction?
If the incident commander calls them, all up to the incident commander, they're not activated until the incident commander. But what we did is we covered this in the code. We put this in the updated code. The code now requires that each developer has a hazard support team that comes. They're not there to put the fire out, I want to be clear on that. They're there to support the incident commander and also part of the handling. So when the event is over, they now are going to do the fire watch, and we're not going to have the volunteers sitting on it. just recently we were I was in Brooklyn yesterday with the people from FASNY. If you're not familiar with FASNY, FASNY is the organization that looks out for the volunteer fire service. They came in, we went into a deep dive, we took a walk around the installation that they had. They were very satisfied, and they realized that a lot of the misinformation is out there on the fire service side. Speaking about any other side except the fire service. And they're looking to bring me up to their convention to start to address the fire service. But there's been a lot of outreach to the fire service, and we asked all the developers, and I sort of asked all these developers, this included, to go out and speak to the fire service, educate them, and get them at the part of the actual ERP, and that's what they did, is they actually addressed it to the incident commander, or the chief in this case, and got their approval. If he didn't give the approval, or he or she didn't give the approval, then, you know, we have to go back and satisfy them, because they're going to be the ones who are showing up.
So we have 3 different fire departments, fire chiefs.
I don't know which one they spoke with.
Yeah, so, Chief Esop was the, and then Gambuti,
Okay,
and then Cunningham?
yeah.
Yeah,
You did,
so
okay.
all 3.
Thank you.
I should also note that NYSERDA requires all of the recent fire code changes that address these batteries, which I don't think have been fully adopted, or have they been adopted by the Uniform Fire Code yet? There's 15 different ones.
Yeah, there's October 1st, it was a choice. You could, the town could, the code official could use either code, right? Come January 1st, they must use the 2025 updated code. So right now it's an option. The reason that they have this lag time is because they need to be educated in the new updated code. And
What are the significant changes between the 2?
Battery and storage was the biggest.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is the-
There is other things that are out there that they have, but the battery and storage.
Phil, do you have other,
Yeah. You have any questions?
please?
Jumping around, just give me a second. Oh, first question, well, additional question is, you submitted drafts of the emergency response plan, which and it looks like you're waiting for responses from the fire department, because many of the highlighted areas, which are incomplete, reference incomplete discussions to see fire department. Are you getting responses? When will we get, let me put it this way, when will we get a final version?
So, internally, we do not finalize any plan until we go out after it's built to make sure it was built according to the approved plans. So we actually have our own oversight on our side. So we wanna make sure if they said it's going to be over in the left side and it's over in the right side, we're gonna tell them to go back and get those plans pre-approved or approved again, because it's not the approved plans. So we will not finalize anything until we do a walkthrough ourselves to make sure everything is functioning the way it's supposed to function. So if they're telling you that this thing has an emergency shut-off, we're gonna activate that emergency shut-off to make sure it's activated and it works. So the functionality of the safeties will work on that end.
So, just by way of example, on page 20 of the emergency response plan, highlighted is the energy storage facility is equipped with X multi-spectrum ultraviolet infrared flame detectors. What is that and what does it do?
Yeah, so they haven't bought the detectors, but they're gonna use an ultraviolet one, so we don't know the model number they're gonna be used. So once we find out what model number, right, and we know that it's compliant to the actual code, that it has a UL listing on it, then we know that we can throw that in there. But until that is actually picked out by them, we cannot put that in there. But we do know that they're going to use an UV IR detector. We just don't know the model number yet.
And what does that do? with the tech?
So it's kind of like a thermal imaging camera. You ever see a thermal imaging camera?
Yeah.
It detects, this is detecting radiant heat. So on the exterior of the box, if there is a fire, it will pick that up. It sends the information to a fire alarm control panel. Fire alarm control panel sends it to a central monitoring station. They dispatch the fire.
Now, if there's not a fire and it's just beginning to heat up,
Yeah.
does it detect that as well?
No, it will not detect that. It will not detect that. The battery management system will detect
All right.
That's looked at by a remote operating center.
Who's gonna talk to me about noise?
We can talk about that. So there was a comment in the most recent, released review letter that, digested some of the noise data that was provided in our recent submission. The sub-consultant, in summary, confirmed that operating at 100% capacity, it is compliant with your code at the property line. The noise level at the property line at 100% operating was around a max, I believe, 43 to 45 decibels. There was also data provided from the analysis, which was an assumed operating capacity of 40% of the battery units, based upon, again, I'm not the consultant, so I'm kind of digesting.
I understand.
Yeah. 40% operating capacity based upon location, weather, surface, that is supposedly the typical operating capacity, which is even less than the 100% capacity. So in summary, it's compliant.
You say 40% of the 5?
40% of the 100, it would be the 40% of the, if you operate 100%, there's fans operating, cooling operating, that is reduced to 40% just for the efficiency. So that, again, that is data that I'm not astute to, I'm just regurgitating data from the noise report.
Well, it's a
The
difficult
ulti-
area because.
What's that?
It's a difficult area because you're projecting, you're making some assumptions about how this is going to operate, what the level of noise would be. I'm gonna just assume for this discussion that the assumptions that you made in coming up with your calculation on the noises do accurately reflect what reality will be, okay? Because you use some kind of modeling, an expert 821 type 1 sound level model. I don't know if that's right or wrong.
Yeah, there's background, the part of the premise of providing this was an ambient background because there is construction level on there, and that was conducted during normal operations, and which was also supplemented with the anticipated noise level of a typical megawatt.
Here's a question.
Yeah.
The LAS max, between the hours of 20:55 and 2:55 in the morning, seems to be the lowest. So that's your background noise. The question is, are the closest residential properties, which is asserted to be not closer than 600 feet, are they gonna hear the noise of the fans from your, whatever devices, the Tesla devices?
I cannot speak to that.
Okay.
The code requires analysis at the property line, and I could state based upon the analysis that's conducted, that the noise produced from the units is compliant with the town code.
The code's a little broader than that.
Yeah, so I can jump in a little bit here. So there's some data in the report where it measures the change that is expected from the project. And typically ambient noise levels, according to this report, I'm just parroting back what's in the report, is only noticeable if it's between 3 and 6 decibels. And if you look at the chart on page 9, it shows for all the residential properties that the change in noise is less than 3 decibels for all of those. So it should not be perceptible to those adjacent residential properties.
However, it is above 3 at the rail trail.
And it's 3.7 and 4.1, so.
Which is above 3.
Yeah.
Very little fence.
That's the new one. People taking the trail, obviously they're moving. It's kind of sort of like solar, when you're driving past it. I mean, it's incidental, it's there, we pick it up. Does the code speak on that, as opposed to a stationary receptor like a home?
Your code, I think, is more important on basics of measurements of property lines and things that the applicant has described. But in terms of potential impacts from noise, the applicant themselves said over 3 even impact. It is a little bit over, but again, it's a sensitive receptor because it is a heritage trail, and people, Mr. Chairman, you mentioned like very short duration. You know, I don't know how long it would take you to walk past the site, but
It's not 3.7.
Yeah.
So, help me understand, how can it be compliant with the property line but not at the heritage tree?
Because your code doesn't talk about that increase. What the applicant's talking about, that standard comes from DEC in terms of mitigating noise impacts. So your code doesn't really speak to any increase or anything like that. It just has a hard and fast number
At the property line.
at the property line, and that's what it is.
Yeah, but and that's the worst case possible scenario, conservative analysis. At the expected 40% operation, it's 0.3 and 0.3. So what the report is trying to say is the actual expected operating condition at 40% of like the fans running the cooling operations, it's below that 3% decibel, or the 3 decibel threshold. Like the actual expected operation, but, you know, if
So
you're
that
looking at
3.7 is based on 100%?
100%.
Full room.
Yep.
So what could you do to mitigate that? It doesn't sound like you have a whole bunch of effort to get it down to 3.
I mean, this was done without barriers, so.
Have a
Yeah,
cutoff?
Yeah.
This one, as Alec mentions, is done without barriers. So, yeah, I mean, I'd have to discuss with the applicant offline, but they're,
Sound better?
Well, and just a nuance to this, is this 100% number is what we're talking about right now? The 40% number is the number you'd prefer to use. In the document, it really didn't explain to us particularly well why 40% is the right number. I think if you could explain why 40% is the real number. You talked about where we are sort of on the planet without, but if these systems at our latitude never run more than 50%, like, I think that would be helpful for us in our analysis here. I don't want to speak for everybody else, but chasing tails for 100%, like if it
That's not how it
legitimately
operates.
would never get there, like, that feels like a lot.
And that's something you could put into a condition of approval.
Right.
So, I'd just like to add something to what you were saying, is that the, both on table 3 and on page 9, it says that, using the 40% load, the proposed best would not emit sound levels exceeding 50 dBA. Where is that? Is that at the receptors? Is that 50 feet away from the source of the noise? It doesn't make clear. If it's at the receptors, it should say 50 dBA at the receptors. So the suggestion is to clarify, when you're making those statements, what location are we talking about that is at a 50 dBA?
Mr. Chairman, maybe it'd be best if the applicant can maybe bring your noise consultant to a subsequent meeting to answer some of these questions. I understand you guys are at a loss, for really just reading a report back to the board and they were.
I'm not the expert, so.
I understand. No, I've been in your shoes before.
I did just have a question like this at a previous presentation,
Yep.
and it was sitting on the top of my head. 45 decibels is like a refrigerator run. So just for comparison, however you wanna use that information.
Other concerns?
No, I think we've taken up enough records.
No, not at all. All good questions. Sure.
Yeah, all I had down was, again, the discipline around that 40% would be super helpful. I think it'd be more helpful to you. And then, in your submissions, you talked about the fire department's response to your presentations, which was positive, and I think the phrase was like, no material problems or no material recommendations. It sounds like they're still working on it, but I think what would be very helpful to us is if we're really sort of smart about like the four corners of their analysis. Like if they, if their analysis includes their expertise about how comfortable they are putting it out is one thing. If they're comfortable with their protective equipment, that's another thing. If they're comfortable with the environmental impact, I'd be surprised if that was within their expertise, but if it is, if we could be, when we get the fire report, or the fire department's report, certain about what is within and without their analysis, that would be super helpful. Because it sounds like we got a fairly good.
Yes, we've requested several times, just noting that we were presenting here tonight to try to have something in writing, and.
Yeah, I think we're gonna need that, for sure.
Yep, I think you're right.
Okay, and that's fine.
No, we're not coming back to it. You're next.
Right, thank you. Thank you very much. I did like these, and I kind of focused on the hazard mitigation analysis and the emergency response plan. So maybe we should look at the site plan first. The access to these two properties, the fire road or whatever, is that meet with the fire code the whole way?
Yes. There's actually, not actually on these plans, but I believe in the plan set, it indicates the 24-foot width, the minimum radius, the turnarounds, the gate with the Knox box.
Okay.
And we're showing just the minimum, what's required, and there's substantially more available based upon the existing site plan. I mean, this is 24 feet wide, we have, I believe, 80 feet. And this is all, again, this is gravel that we're just showing what would be required, but there's substantially more outside of that. And then similarly on the west side, this is also the compliant for the 75,000 pound grading and turning and all that.
Okay. So how are you gonna mark those fire lanes?
So there was a comment that was addressed, and we mentioned that in the response letter. The site management has an agreement with the fire department to keep this open and access.
So I don't feel good enough with that. Most fire lanes are marked and delineated, striped, signs out, whatever. I have been to this site and have had to bob and weave around vehicles that are parked there because it's an active site. There's no doubt about it. And there's sometimes equipment is out there, blocked off, whatever. I really think it needs to be delineated that, hey, this is a fire lane, you can never park here. You can never leave.
So Terrence actually discussed this with the three chiefs, and they were okay. That was the response that was given to us. We can.
Sure, I think the other person has to be happy with that is Frank, since he's the fire code administrator or fire code official.
I would say, I don't think we don't have a problem with labeling fire lane, active fire lane, or posting it in some way if that's a condition that the planning board wants to place on it.
I think it really has to be, because.
Yeah, and you mentioned this as a concern in the past, and we'll have a dedicated easement, but you're saying it's possible that somebody will park something somewhere.
They do now, when it's very obvious.
So we can come up with a labeling, plan that will hopefully satisfy that.
Something will address the ground.
We have
Mm-hmm.
fire, the typical 18 by 24 signs, no parking, fire lane, that's easy.
You go up to Berkeley, or you go up to one of the high schools or schools, wherever, and they're striped and everything, and people still park there. No ands, ifs, and buts about it. But at least if it's marked, they have a chance of being. Thank you on that. In the emergency response plan, local police department is incorrect. The local police department is not the sheriff's office. The rest of these that are empty right now, I think need to be filled in. My concern is when we get to the point of having this, who is the subject matter expert And do they exist at this point in time? Because this is a new thing. Because I believe that there has to be somebody available within 15 minutes on the phone. And then somebody has to be on site within 4 hours. Okay? So do those people exist within a 4-hour commute of here? And I don't know the answer because it's so, if I'm sending somebody down from Syracuse, I'm not sure that qualifies for 4 hours. And just, I want to know that there is some parties out there that are capable of doing this, or are we just pretending out there? Okay. So the same thing with the systems owner. A system owner, I think, is going to change because I think you've already said you're not going to run it, you're going to turn it over. Am I correct with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So we'll have that happen too. Okay, but I think some of those things are going to have to happen prior to, at some point in time, you talked about commissioning. I think some things have to happen before commissioning, because I think that the fires that were down in Warwick did happen before commissioning. So things have to be in place prior to that, I believe, to be safe.
When you say commissioning, the essentially turning it on in the, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, I think there's two separate things in commissioning, I think in the building code. Commissioning is when it's all been tried and true and it's all ready to go.
Yep.
So I don't think we can wait for some of these safety issues to be taken care of at the point of commissioning. It has to be.
I see, yes.
Prior to that, there has to be, some of these things have to be in place. The subject matter expert has to be in place during construction.
Yep.
Okay. And then when we have an issue here, if we do have something here, and I hope we never do, what's the way of notifying people on the site? Is there, I know you talk about at the enunciator panel, it's going to be visible and an audible alarm. I don't think that people running equipment out here are going to hear that, and I don't know that they have to, but if somebody's fueling up right there, maybe they'd need to know. And then how are you going to notify those people? And somehow it seems like maybe there needs to be a fire alarm out there. I don't know what it needs to be. It seems like it should be easy enough, but I could be totally wrong. Okay.
Part of the fire alarm control panel, does it include orange and strobes?
So, yeah, it does, and I wanted to address that. I'll address a couple of things that you said.
Yeah, go ahead.
Number one, you're right on the subject matter expert, that's exactly what they do in New York City. The moment batteries come onto the scene itself, not even construction, once they get onto the site, the subject matter expert must be available at that particular point. The other thing that you mentioned about the strobes, so these, whatever model they get, they're going to have the strobes and the horns on it. They're pretty loud, so if there was someone on the exterior, they would hear it. I'm sure they would hear that. But they come as part of the package for the UVIR.
Yeah, I'm just, this is a little bit unusual, I think, in that we have the construction vehicles working there. So I think that horn's gonna have to be louder than normal perhaps. And I know sometimes they can adjust those based on the ambient or the local noise level, and then they go higher or lower depending on what the noise is currently there. Directional, got it, yeah. Okay, during the operating span of, I'm sorry, page 12, the operating lifespan of the installation, there's going to be an annual review or whatever, and then you look at Appendix C, and Appendix C really doesn't have anything. I just wonder what the annual review is. Just a blank, but data was conducted and the system owner sign off. What's going to be involved in the annual review? What's the criteria for that?
If the annual review, when they do, if they have to do augmentation, we want to make sure that it's properly permitted, that it has its UL standards on it, and it has all the criteria as it was in the beginning when it was first permitted. So if they have to add on more for capacity, we want to make sure that any repairs and replacements that they're doing like in kind, all of that stuff needs to be documented. And that is something that we look at in our New York City projects that we have, where we cover, we're the subject matter expert for the New York City projects that we have in 5 boroughs.
So who looks at the, if anything, everything's gone, you've commissioned it, it's running, and now something has to be changed out because of whatever. Who looks at that and makes sure that's in compliance?
There's electrical people, they have their own contract that will come in and pull the batteries out if they need to. In this case, Tesla does their own work, they have their own certified people that come in. If they have to actually pull a module and replace it with another module, they wanna make sure it's alike in kind. So not, it's gonna have to match up because it's circuitry, but to make it sure.
And then who inspects it?
Who inspects it from there? It's
Sure.
Yeah, right now, what you do is it goes into the battery management system, battery management system tell you that something's not working properly, and then they're gonna have to come back around, but they'll inspect it on their own.
I'm just a little bit uncomfortable with that, because normally when we get electrical work done, you have a third-party electrical inspector after that. And you're telling me that Tesla's gonna do it, Tesla's gonna inspect it, and then we're gonna depend on some computer to say, yes, it's good enough. That sounds wrong.
Well, I don't know if if you do have your own inspectors that come out, I'm sure they can look, but I don't think that they're actually moving any wires. It's usually a plug and play that they do. So pull out and then plug it back in. I don't know if there's much inspection needed to be done on that, but I don't, if you have your own inspectors, I guess they can.
I'm not sure, I've never had those these, in fact.
Yeah, so, listen, so there's all new technology, new codes are coming out. We'll take a deep dive into this, as this progresses.
I'm assuming there's some type of annual inspection, just like you would have a regular NFP inspection of any fire alarm.
Yeah,
system.
yeah, you're right. Fire alarm needs to be inspected annually. The battery energy storage should be. The code requires every 3 years for them to take a look and make sure there's compliancy to the code itself, which would include any type of signage, if it was missing or anything like that. All of that is looked at, security of the fence, any type of dings or whatever it may be.
Includes the UV sensors and
Yeah.
horns and strobes and the fire alarm control panel itself and.
And in order to have a renewal of the operating permit, this is something that you should be asking for. And that's what we do. We do an annual renewal of our operating permit. We give all necessary information they probably don't want to really look at, but we give it to you, which shows the work that was done throughout the year, whether it's repairs and replacements and so on.
So then you have things like these vents that you say are gonna open up, or are made to open up, I believe, right?
Desegregation venting?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, how often those have to be inspected, how often do they have, and then, let's ask the other question, if it does have a problem during winter and there's snow on it, does somebody have to remove that snow? Fire exits, we have to do that, and I don't know the answer.
So their deflagration panels are on the side.
Okay, I thought it was on the top.
The top, but the side, the top side. So it's not on the actual top.
All right.
On the,
Okay, all right, I got it, top of the wall, or whatever.
Yes, top of the wall, thank you, yeah.
The lockbox access, this lockbox is bigger than anything I've ever heard of, for the fire department. And it also seems like a lot of this stuff is really not gonna be very helpful with that during a different incident. Is this really what's supposed to be, is gonna go in there? You have operations and maintenance logs, you have product manuals. I hope the fire department's not reading those when they show up.
No, that's required in the code, is that they have this available. If they wanna use it, they can. If they don't, that's up to them, but it's gotta be available to them.
Is there a certain minimum distance that panel
They did not.
or
they
box
did not-
needs to be set up away from the equipment itself?
They don't, they usually try to get it to where the fire department would actually enter the scene itself.
Coming into the property.
If they were actually, going into the property, so it should be readily available. Again, that can be dictated by them. They say, hey, we want it, 20 feet away. That's fine, that's up for interpretation.
Okay, there's warnings on, page 18, and I think these are repeated, several other times. Any failure or alarm condition should result in the assumption of an explosion risk. So, I'm not pretending I think it's gonna explode every time something goes wrong, but it sounds as though there's gonna be a lot of, what hopefully are false alarms. How are we gonna deal with this?
So that's the nice part about having UV-IR cameras on the exterior, because it actually reduces the nuisance alarms, where there's nothing more than a maintenance issue. So it will only have the fire department come if it's on fire. Fire department really won't be able to do anything if it's in distress. It will take care of evasive action.
I'm aware, I agree with you, and in fact, I'm not sure they can do anything when they show up anyhow. But my real concern is that, we're gonna have these, we have to assume the risk is there for an explosion. And it seems like we're gonna have that a lot. In which case, I believe what you're saying is that anytime there is that, the fire I mean, anytime there is that kind of a concern, that the fire department should be notified is what it says in here sometimes, I believe.
Because of the fact that we will have vaporization, which turns into a flammable gas that can be trapped on the inside, right? As opposed to we will always emphasize that there always is potential of explosion if it's not consumed by the actual. Because the fire department cannot protect themselves against that explosion, so we want them to respect that. And then when we go out there, when it's on fire, we're telling them the explosion is eliminated as a result of consuming the gases that could build up. The gas is no longer built up as a result of consuming it with the fire itself.
With those UV IR sensors on the exterior, is there any issue as far as dust from construction equipment moving around, as far as masking the
They should be
performance of those
maintained,
sensors?
yeah, they should be maintained. We
But who
haven't
does
seen
that?
that, we haven't seen that. We did have one false alarm in New York City with 2 cars, but that was as a result of, we boiled it down to, because we couldn't figure it out. We boiled it down to maybe it was the angle of the sun that reflected off something that could have maybe actually set off the IR
I'm
camera.
going, if you're having an inspection annually, I'm sure it's not the responsibility of the TAM to make sure your sensors are, clean and,
Well,
I mean,
well,
is there
the
an
fire
outside
alarm,
service that
the
would
fire
check
alarm
it?
company actually shoots a beam at it in order to activate it. That's part of the inspection, the inspection, testing, and maintenance, and they need to shoot that beam. If that beam
See if
is
it picks
picking
it
it
up.
up, it's simulating a flame. So I would think that the lens would be clean on that, but that's a good question, and I don't have the answer. It's part of their inspection, testing, and maintenance that they should be doing.
But again, like was mentioned before, it's an unusual site because of construction activity there and not having asphalt driveways, it's all dust and dirt. Rather,
There's on page 19, there's a section here that says, in case of flooding, stay out of the water, and it makes sense, because it may be energized with electricity. How are we gonna make sure we don't get flooded there ever? Yeah, I know you're not in a floodplain. I'm asking, why should I have that risk?
If it's flooded,
Yeah.
I think most of your town is going to be underwater too.
Oh,
It's in the
it's-
500, it's outside, I believe it's outside the 500-year flood.
I agree, I think we'd have to have an arc at that point, but,
Yeah.
but I really am concerned, why would I even have to be? I mean, I'm assuming this is gonna be built up slightly, or at least on a concrete pad, that I'm not gonna have that issue?
Well, I mean, the way it's graded is we have a swale that is collecting the upslope to redirect that around the pad. I mean, there is a little bit of a reveal, it's not as if, the pad is here and it's 4 feet.
Right.
It's intended to try to keep some of that overland flow and convey off the pad. But it's not a noticeable step up because you still have to be able to do your forklifts while it's in construction, but.
Thank you.
What would be, do we know what the DBA would be if there were a false alarm?
The actual alarm itself?
Yes.
That's probably dictated in 72, page 72. They want it to be loud because they have to notify people, so it will be loud. It will definitely be
So
loud.
it would be implosive, it would be a shock increase.
I don't know if you ever heard one inside a building, but they're pretty loud when they do go off.
Don't,
You mean like that guy?
don't take this as gospel, but the number 90 dBA sticks in my head. I could be wrong, but it's loud.
That's correct.
The noise is principally coming from the fans, is that right? Is anyone
If you're asking me, during normal operations, what you're saying, not during an emergency, right?
Yeah, during normal operations.
I would say yes.
And the fans are on how long during the day?
I don't know.
I'd like to know that. And council advised us that it's probably in the DEC's noise and mitigation policy, that anything in excess or anything below a change in noise of 3 dBA, the DEC finds acceptable. Is that right? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, what the report says is it's perceptible. 3 to 6 dBA is perceptible, so like you pick it up there. I haven't reviewed the DEC mitigation.
That
so-
only deals with sensitive receptors, so.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'd have to reread the DEC guidance on mitigation, but I don't know if they're saying it's an impact, they're just saying it's perceptible.
Are the enclosures insulated, or do they rely on the heat generated by the equipment inside?
I do know they're insulated. I can't really speak on that. I do know they're insulated though.
I was thinking as far as that, the noise attenuation as well, does that help, or is that already factored in?
Yeah, I would be guessing. I have.
The projected increase of 3.7, I would also like to know what time of day are we speaking? Is it 2 in the morning, or is it 10 o'clock? Or 5 o'clock in the afternoon?
Yeah, on page 20, there's a section there about additional actions triggered upon flame detection. And it says additional information is to be updated prior to commission. Is there anything we're missing at this point that is gonna happen if there is a flame detection?
Basic, I can go basic, right, but I don't think the fire alarm plan has been proposed yet, so that's why it's not complete, and then we try to give as much information as we can. But if it were to actually activate, as I mentioned before, it sends that signal to the fire alarm control panel, sends it to the central monitoring station. This is a new update too in the code. Originally, they didn't have to have fire alarms at these sites. This is now a new update that we just put into the code. Now it's mandated that they do it. And then from the central station, it will go to the fire department for response.
And what kind of delays? Because delays are horrible sometimes.
From the point of activation to the point of dispatch?
To
Or
the
to
point,
of
Yep. Or to the point of,
I would guess between 1 to 2 minutes. I don't know the exact time.
because I've had them 5 minutes or more sometimes, and then obviously it failed, but. The SME, what's the who determines who's qualified?
Yeah, that's also built out into code where we wanted to make sure, when the code was being addressed, we wanted to make sure that these people could actually integrate into the incident command system with New York City, with the fire department. So they are at least, a minimum requirement is that they understand the systems themselves, right? They understand the hazards that are associated with them, they understand what protections are associated with them. Plus, they have to actually have incident command system 100, 200, 700, which allows them to integrate into the incident command. And then after the event is over, they now become the new incident commander as a result of the fire department transferring command to them.
The incident command stuff, I finally understood it, and I think it's good. But up until then, somebody can say they know it, or somebody can feel it. You got the new hire, you go out. That's not comfortable. But if they have to have at least that training, I can understand that. Thank you. It says here on page 22, flammable potentially, general hazards associated with battery storage. Flammable and potentially explosive gases are generally white in color, and then this may be released in large quantities. If it's not generally white, I thought somewhere I read that sometimes you don't see it at all. If the things that are really burning or showing up white is the other things that are burning.
So these are observations that are seen during testing, whether it's cell testing, module testing, or even unit testing. The failure of the battery, once it goes into thermal runaway, it doesn't immediately go on fire. It will push out that white smoke.
Right.
That's indicative of the thermal runaway event, and the electrolyte is vaporizing into that white smoke.
How dangerous are the gases for the general public that live around it? Because I've noticed a number of the houses have gone up for sale since this item on Cheat Chunk.
Yeah,
And
so we
also,
do-
if somebody's walking on that trail, how fast do they have to get off that trail and try and find a car?
Good question. So, what gases are you talking about? Gases from the cell?
Well, yeah, if there's a fire and all of a sudden there's gases coming maybe from the fire.
Products of combustion. Are we talking products of combustion or failure of the cell? Because there's two different types of gases.
Well, either one or both.
Okay, so the cell, that cell information, what they do, as part of the testing and validation, they need to fail the cell. They do it in an inner chamber They collect the gas, they run through a sophisticated machine called an MSGC, a GCMS, and they break it down to its individual constituents. All of that is going to be presented to the code official for them to take a look at. I've looked at some of them, and we see things like hydrogen that's in there, a lot of hydrogen, which is an inert gas, but very flammable, right? Non-toxic. We've seen other smaller components like some ethylene and other flammable gases. Methane is in there. So it depends on, number one, the chemistry, and it depends on the format and the amount of gas that's in there. Different formats will give you, bigger formats will give you more gas, obviously. As far as the products of combustion, the products of combustion would be the balance of the system, including the batteries themselves, where now you have the gases that are coming off, right? The smoke, for lack of a better term, that's coming off the product. They are aligned with, and there's a paper that's out there, they're aligned with the product of combustion of what we see at a general structural fire. I'm telling you it's a general, I'm not telling you it's a structural fire, I'm telling you the products of combustion are aligned in what they see.
One other thing, you mentioned a fire hydrant, which Lee said there is no fire hydrants out in that area except for maybe the one that was going to Amy's. But it also states here that there's a well on the property itself, so where would the water supply come from? The well that's gonna turn into the public, or from the fire hydrant?
I mean, that would be, I think the fire department will need to, obviously, that's gonna have to come from them, but my understanding from communicating, from talking with the fire department, is that there is an existing well. There's actually 2 locations, they know it better than I do, where they can access and set up a relay for water. And one of them is a well, I understand, on Hartley Road, near Amy's Kitchen.
Well or hydrant?
I'm sorry, a hydrant. The well on site is not.
The well is on site.
Yeah, the well on site is not proposed to be the source of water for the fire department, but that's.
The well on site is immediately adjacent to the panels. The units is being abandoned. They have to put in a well.
But it says here that the well is going to become a public well.
Well, it's gonna be another well being drilled because TAM is becoming a public water supply because of the number of employees they have there. Public meaning it's their own people, not public for the town.
Not public for the town, okay.
Right, it's for that parcel, for a number of people. It meets the criteria of a public water system.
Okay, but they probably wouldn't be using that well, they'd be using the fire hydrant that's out on the road center.
I couldn't say.
I think we need to confirm that, in fact, the fire department can hook up to that, and that, in fact, that fire hydrant's gonna have water. If it belongs to Amy's Kitchen and they're the only ones who have control over it,
And they're not there.
I agree, when we met with them, they were speaking amongst themselves, and they were matter of fact about it, but that's, you have to hear that from them.
I think so. I'm sorry, still going?
No, go
On the reignition and all that kind of stuff, you said that before that, after the fire is, and I'm not sure what the term of the fire is out, because it talks about it, can burn for a couple hours or less or whatever, and then you're gonna turn it over so that the fire department's gonna turn over, so they don't have to sit there and babysit it, for up to 30 days. I think the longest time has been 30 days. Who's gonna do that, and what's the qualifications for that group of people to be there?
So remember, they're not gonna be a mitigation team. They are there just to perform fire watch until it's decommissioned, at that particular point. If it were to go back, their only job for that particular point is to observe, call 911, and get the fire done.
So back to what are their qualifications? I don't want just anybody showing up there to say, you watched for the fire.
So they're gonna watch it, as we mentioned before, we have the ICS information that they have to be in there, they have to be familiar with the actual system, they have to be familiar with the site, they're supposed to be familiar with the emergency response plan, so they know how to fly alarms actually action. And then, we wanna make sure that they understand fire protections and the hazards associated with this thing when it goes on fire. That's the goal of that.
Good.
And the interpretation.
That's a good answer, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Diana, to answer your question, the emergency response plan does say that lithium-ion batteries may release large quantities of flammable and toxic gas.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Are you looking for what the toxins are, or is that sufficient?
Well, I'm
They're
just
telling
worried
you
about
this-
the people that live in that area, or even the town employees. If there's one way getting in there, how are they gonna get out if the fire department's coming in? And the second thing is, like I said, houses are going up for sale on Cheecham. So I was just wondering, are those people selling because they're worried about this potential issue? Or are they just moving out? So, you know, I'm concerned about what the general constituents in the area are worried about, that they would wanna move. And it's straight down the line.
I think some of those chemicals or whatever are best on page 24.
So I was just wondering about, you know, how flammable it is, how dangerous is it? Will the general public need gas masks if the fire department isn't gonna have a mask on? You know, what does that mean? What is an escape route? What is the plan? Is it dangerous for the whole area? On and on and on and on. That was my point.
I did read, and I forget where now, that some municipalities, frankly, are more urbanized than this setting, do require a zone, a protective zone of 75 to 600 feet. One city required 75 feet, another one required 600 feet. Distance between the source, potential source of fire and residential communities. It focused on residential in those particular studies.
There is I think, and I was looking for something to expand on. There is at least this 100-foot number that's thrown out there, right?
That 100-foot number is in the code. There's a whole story behind that name what came about. I don't know if you really want to hear it. But that is in the code, and it was for remote sites. And when the code was first established, they put that 100-foot because the large-scale fire testing that I mentioned for validation, a lot of companies did not want to do it. This is exactly where this remote came out. And we said, okay, if you don't want to do it, then you're confined to have your systems to be remote. That means on all 4 sides, you have to be 100 foot from the property line. That's where remote came from. A lot of people are misinterpreting that, and that's the evolution of how that came about. Today, you cannot get into New York State unless you do large-scale fire testing. So technically, the remote, even though it's in the code, technically the remote doesn't apply.
Well, it's in the code, it does apply, right?
It applies in the code, yeah, it applies, but the spirit of why it was put in there was just explained.
Unless Frank can go with the spirit, I think he's gonna have to comply with the code.
Yeah, no,
Okay. So we're talking about 100 foot around both of these separate units, right? These are 2 separate properties, 2 separate,
There's 2 separate properties
so it's 100 foot around each one of them, right?
from in between each operating system.
I think that's the way it reads. It doesn't say unless they're adjacent.
That's, short answer, no. These are back to back. There's a parcel line that runs down through here.
So why wouldn't they have to be 100 feet apart? You seem to indicate it should be here, you seem to say in the code it says that.
The code, and again, this is, I think this is a misinterpretation of the code on the remote. As a result of the 9540A large-scale fire testing that they have to have, it takes them, the remote no longer applies, and it talks about systems that don't. They gave them a bone if they said if you did not do the large-scale fire testing, then the only way you can do it is a remote installation. And that's why you probably could have taken that out of the code in the update, but it wasn't. But that was how the application of the remote should be applied. If systems came in that were not tested or listed to 9540 and 9540A.
Which the Tesla Megapack is certified to those.
That's correct.
And page 22, and again, we're back to the water issue. The application of water directly to affected battery modules may potentially prolong the incident. We seem to go back and forth between, yes, we're gonna use water, yes, we may use water, and no, we're not gonna use water. And I'm not sure where we come down on this, by
So that comes down to the training with the fire department. The incident commander makes that choice, whether they're going to use water, whether they need to use water. They're gonna do it in consultation with the subject matter expert, looking for the battery management system. This will be all done in their training itself, to see if there's heat transfer to the adjoining one, where we're concerned about that one actually failing. If they were to actually use water, as was mentioned in the meeting that they had, they would do a water shuttle compliant with NFPA 1142, which means they would actually bring water to the site itself if it's needed, and they can actually suck it out of a big container, and then they continue to do that operation. And that's exactly what was done up in Chemont. They used a water shuttle compliant to NFPA 1142. So it is in the code that they can do that.
Okay, you said before that the fire department is satisfied they can relay the water fast enough. How much, is this gonna be an unusual amount of water needed for this kind of fire, or is it a lesser amount? Certain fires, I think, I've heard of crazy things like, for a car fire with the batteries, they've used 30,000 gallons, which I think was excessive.
And it was a futile effort.
Right. I don't deny it, but nevertheless, it's done, or that's what they need. But the question is, how much water would be needed to do what you're saying it should be done? But you're also talking here about having to do the fog or whatever else like that.
So what we've observed in the large-scale fire testing, specifically for this particular model, which is available again, we did not see a sustained burn, but what we see is a fire that takes place, it goes dormant, and then a fire may come back to life, and then it goes dormant, and then a fire. So we have not seen a sustained burn for the lithium iron phosphate type of chemistries.
Page 23, explosions. It says here that it may create an explosive atmosphere, posing a serious risk to first responders and nearby exposures. And then talks about the lower limits, upper limits. I understand all that. If we had an explosion or whatever, what do we have to look at? Because at some point they talk about the angles.
Yeah.
And fire department's approaching at the correct angle so that it's not an explosion risk for them.
So, a very rare case, if they were to have an explosion, but this is why we put it in there, to make sure that it's in their head, that, hey, just stay away. As a result, use the reach of the stream, right? If they need to lock water, they're going to use the distance itself. It's a hypothetical that I don't like to really answer hypotheticals, but in the event that there was an explosion, we're just concerned to make sure that no doors fly off to them in front of them, right? And that's where, this is why we stay at the angle, and we don't go in front of the door. We stay at the angle, so if a door, because that's gonna be the weakest point, right? Where you actually have the opening. So the pressure would actually push that door back. So this is the exact reason why we tell them to stay at a 45 at an angle, 75 feet away. So if there was a deflagration that took place, maybe a door could be blown out and become ejected.
Sure, I mean, there's times when we put deflagration walls and whatever. So then where the fire department or anybody's gonna access into this area, that's not gonna be in the pathway of an explosion, right? You're gonna go in from the side where you're not gonna be coming at the door.
They will be trained to do that, to make sure that they do not stand in front of the actual event itself. And if it's on fire, remember, we reduce the risk of explosion being on fire. It's when it's not on fire is where we have to make sure that they're concerned. And that information can be attained through the reach back number and looking at the BMS. We can take a look at the BMS and we can tell whether we have something failed on the inside. Because they may go there for something that is not even part of the fire alarm. It may be a phone alarm, where someone goes by and says, I think I saw smoke coming out of that thing. And now they're stuck there saying, where do we go next? And we knew this is a challenge on it. This is why the code was updated, that they have to reach back, that you can go back, take a look. We see nothing on the BMS, there's nothing showing here. We also have a closed circuit TV that they can view into, see if there was a balance of the system. Maybe it wasn't the batteries, could be transformer or something like that. We take a look at that. And all of this stuff was put in there specifically so to give the fire department help. Just happened recently in Staten Island when we had this. The fire department showed up, we didn't see a battery. We looked at the battery management system, we spoke to the dispatcher. dispatcher said, I said, you know, we're not seeing anything, maybe they see something on the site. Spoke to them, we were on the phone to the dispatcher as they were pulling up. They didn't see anything on their side, we gave them the okay that we don't see anything, we said we're gonna continue to monitor the battery management system. They left to turn around within 5 minutes of the time that they got there to the time they were leaving. So we know it works, this is why we adopted it into the New York State Code.
Thank you. Maybe have the same thing. We talk about, anytime the fire department has to respond, they should have the proper equipment, all the right PPE, including the breathing apparatus. How far out do they need to have to worry about that? Because I thought I read something just lately where firemen in perhaps, I thought it was California, were supposedly injured with their breathing 300 feet away from a car fire. So kind of a question here, where do the fire department have to know, all right, we should stop here, get our apparatus on, and then go closer?
Yeah, and that comes up to the supervisor on scene. Everyone needs to mask up the moment they get off the rig. So in other words, if you can smell it, you're already exposed.
Yes.
Listen, at very small amounts, it's not gonna really affect them, but how clean is clean, right? When do we put it on, right?
Yeah, that's-
Sometimes you need to conserve your air when you're going to a fire, so you really have to have air management. So sometimes you wanna leave it up to them, but if you really wanna get sterile, then when you get out of the apparatus itself, then you can have it on. So all up to the end user on when they wanna put that on.
Sure, but you talk about a staging area, and then where's the staging area? How do you set up a staging area? And I don't know the answer.
I think we did have a staging area in there, I'll have to take a look at that, but that still need to be probably finalized with the fire department, and I'll have to go back and ask the gentleman who was here with the fire department.
And still 100 feet away, but again, that 100 feet's not there, at least, it sounds like the minimum.
Yeah. And remember, the staging area is where they're gonna actually put their planting, right? We wanna try to put it into a clean area. 100 feet we feel is decent, right, as a result of some of the gases that were captured at actual events, where we went around the perimeter of the fence and we got data from that. And we can also tell you that we monitored the 911 system to see if anyone had called 911 who was overcome by any type of smoke. And we did not see anyone who was attended to for an emergency. If they self-dispatched, we're not aware of that. But we didn't see any ambulances that were assigned to any of people that were overcome by the failures that took place in either Warwick and Chamont. We haven't seen it. Even in East Hampton, people didn't even know it actually took place.
Unless you have the two of them real close together, and if you're talking about this fog to keep the heat from transferring from one unit to another, how do you prevent the heat from transferring from one of these sites to the other site? If you don't have any space in between to put a fog in?
I'm not sure if we have another site.
You have two sites there where they're back to back.
You're gonna have to show me that.
Right
So
there.
we have the 3 containers from one site?
Yep.
And the 3 containers from the other site, but they're,
How do you keep one from, you just stand at the end and kind of shoot it in?
Yeah, great question. So, that's a pretty big separation distance right there.
Not there's a fence there, you can't get in between the fences, but.
Yeah, but even the heat transfer,
Yeah, I don't know.
There can be a heat flux analysis that we've done if you're concerned about that, but we've done heat flux analysis in New York City, and we looked at numbers that are just where it's going to start to affect the human skin with no personal protective equipment. That's how safe we are. People walking along the street, because in New York City they're up
Sure.
against,
Yep.
right? It's a compacted area. And we wanted to make sure that, and if there was a concern, we put up some sort of CMU wall, cement wall, to try to hold back any heat. But, when you're talking about just someone walking by, they would have to stand there for a little bit of time in order for them to actually get some sort of maybe a sunburn.
Yeah, but they talk here about the fire burns at between 1,000 and 1,600 degrees. If that one unit's burning at 1,600, and certainly in some of these fires, they burn through the metal.
Yeah.
is it gonna be adequate enough just to have a fence in between there, or should there be CMU units there?
So we haven't seen it burn through the metal. They may have deteriorated something.
Chemung did, I think, it went right through the roof.
Yeah, that was the cable trays in the back. But, okay, we'll use that, right, if it burns through the metal. What the concept is for these here is the concept is they're treated as if it's an oven, right, where we try to contain the heat within the actual battery container itself. You open up the doors like you open up an oven door, the heat will come out. So most of the heat in the testing that they've done, most of the heat will come out from the front where they do their maintenance, where the doors open up, where they actually have to access the stuff, just like an oven would be. So that's why you'll see when you have front to front separation distances, you'll see an 8-foot separation distance in there, because that's where the heat is actually usually coming out on that side. In this one here, we have it on the side, so the heat generally comes out of the
So
front.
it's gonna spread within the one unit as opposed to spreading from side to side.
Yes, it should stay in one unit as validated in the testing.
So I think in Chemung, they ended up 3 out of 4 of them caught fire, I think.
The whole row went on fire.
Okay.
And I can tell you that was a fire protection 101, I'm not here to knock anyone, the company, they actually tested their system, but when they installed it with something that wasn't part of the testing. So what happened was the fire went up, and there was a cable tray in the back. This is all documented evidence in a root cause analysis, so I'm not telling you anything that's not public. It went up, and it went straight across the back of them. And that's, otherwise, if they didn't have that cable tray, if the cables came from underneath, which Tesla does, right, because fire travels up, we probably would not have seen that scenario where it went down like that.
So I think you're answering my question kind of, but let's ask the question just to get it on the record. These are close, they're not close, but they're anyhow, there is a good bit of fuel for refueling back there. And I think these are far enough away from that. They're gonna move the tank?
It was just to move the propane.
We're not moving the tank.
Was it? I thought the
The
original
tanks are
plan was
not
to
being
move.
moved. This is actually a covered storage building, drive-through facility. It's not proposed to be removed.
That whole facility is far enough away that we don't have to worry about the.
That was-
I don't know what the distance is for the tanks.
Do we have the distance between the buildings and the?
Is.
Yeah, but sometimes even in house fires, the house next door will start to catch fire.
It's
So
at
I'm just
least
wondering if this part that we have to worry about that or not.
65 feet.
60-something we talked about, and you said we could do a heat flux analysis if that was something that was a concern.
Yeah, we can put a heat flux analysis out there, and to make sure that we're not going to have the pressure relief device activate as a result of the heat that may transfer over there. There's mitigation ideas.
Okay, and the same thing, of course, that's also probably the direction that some of those doors are in, or is that last unit gonna have the doors going into the?
I'm sorry.
So the front is here,
Yep.
and the doors would open, they'd be accessing from this side,
Yeah.
and then accessing the western facility from this
And so
way.
the doors on each of those units are each side, so I'm just asking a question.
Yeah.
On the last one that's closest to the fuel,
Is that what?
are the doors gonna be facing the fuel or not?
That is, so you got the fuel here,
Right,
Oh,
and
the
then we
fuel's
have
over
the
here.
and
big-
then this is this
So
one.
yeah, so those doors would be facing out that way, yeah, to open up.
Okay, and then, so the question is that a risk, or should that be changed in direction or not?
I don't know, can we reorient it, or can we do a heat flux
I don't think-
analysis? Can we do a heat flux analysis would satisfy you to show you that?
Well, let's talk about the heat flux analysis. This is part of the, Sean, resolution, this heat flux analysis, satisfy the planning board?
Well, it could be, if it's something that satisfies the planning board, and then they defer to you like any other.
Yeah.
But I don't know if this is something the board wants to see, because it could affect the site. So if the heat flux analysis comes back and it says that you could have a problem, what is the plan at that point?
I can tell you that we've done heat flux analysis, usually 28 feet is the number where we get the sunburn. So that's not a high temperature that's gonna activate a pressure relief device, especially if it's full. because it's gonna absorb all that into it. But we can do it for the board itself.
The overarching point is that it's really at the applicant's risk, right? So let's just say, for argument's sake, that the board decides to defer that compliance to you under the code. Then, if it doesn't comply, then these folks have to come back here and work something else out on the site, so removal, relocation, something along those lines. So it really is at the applicant's risk in terms of processing the application.
Page 23. They talk about, the last paragraph, an arc flash boundary. What is that, and is there something on the plan that shows that?
Yeah, we put that out there, just to cover hazards that are there. Fire departments should not be touching these things. They'll be trained not to touch them. They're not trained in any of this stuff. That is not a routine training that they would go through to touch any electrical equipment. Anytime there's an electrical emergency, especially when it deals with a grid, they're gonna leave it to the local, grid operators who make sure that they touch it. Fire departments generally will wait for them. But we would still like to put it out there that they know what an arc flash is as part of the hazards. That anytime you deal with electrical equipment, you have to at least address that the arc flashes that are out there.
Okay, so it's not one of these things I have to worry about, 25-foot radius around it?
No.
Okay, I don't think it is, but,
Yes.
yeah, I mean, I know about arc faults and stuff in the bedrooms there.
And that's what it has to do with, right?
Yeah.
Electrically energized components come with it.
Yeah.
Arc flash components.
Okay, thank you. There's a comment here, page 24, additional hazards and consideration, for additional hazards associated with leaked coolant, leaked refrigerant, leaked electrolytes, and emergency considerations during storage, operation, and transport. See the product level information from the Tesla. We haven't talked about any of these other possible hazards, and why haven't we?
I think what we're addressing there is that they have a liquid coolant. The liquid and coolant will contain ethylene glycol as part of antifreeze, like you have in your car, as part of the cooling mechanism that they have. So they have a liquid cooled system. So if that were to breach, we just want to make sure that people know that this is ethylene glycol and they should be aware of that. Similar to what you would see in your car.
So the quantities are not significant, or what are we gonna have, how much coolant, refrigerant, electrolytes are we gonna have on site? We were talking before about, water issues and getting into groundwater.
Sure.
Are there any of these gonna be issues for that?
We don't see that as an issue. It should stay within the container, but if you need numbers on the amount, I don't know that off the top of my head. I don't know the
I'm
amount
assuming it's
that
not
looks like.
a couple hundred gallons, but I just would like to say.
Yeah, I don't know the number of that.
Okay. And again, this is a fire department thing, and I don't know of it. I would assume these guys do it all the time, but I was surprised to see that jewelry such as necklaces and shall be removed to avoid contact. Maybe they all, 40 years ago I was on the fire department. Never done since. And I never thought about taking a wedding band off or anything like that. Is that really a big concern here beyond what fire department normally has?
It's a conductor of heat, so we always like to say that you shouldn't have any type of metal on you because it conducts heat.
So it's not a thing where you have to work more in the fire department, hey, in this particular case,
I
it's a
don't think
bigger
many
issue.
people are gonna be taking their wedding rings off or any type of, but we still have to address it.
Mhm. I know when I go for an MMI, I take everything off like that. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And on page 25, they talk about, in the plan, delineate the danger zone to mitigate the risk of first responders and bystanders. I think we should be able to do that prior to turn this project over to completion. What is the danger zone? And I have no idea how to answer the question.
So that all is done by the incident commander. You may have a puff of smoke that comes out, you may have a full-fledged event that comes out. You may have something else that is not associated with the actual batteries that are on the site that has an issue. So all of that danger zone is going to be based on what the incident commander makes as the hot zone, when you just rather not have people in there, in that particular area, at least not with any type of personal protective equipment, an SCBA, and their full structural firefighting gear.
Okay, and I understand that, and so if a fire department's being called out for this, how much information are they gonna get before they arrive on the site? In other words, it may be, hey, you stop at 100 feet, have enough time that you can pass the information along to us, hey, it's a much smaller issue, so we can go closer. But I kind of would, it seems like we should know, or the fire department should know more than me, what the danger zone might be, the biggest danger zone, and then we can shrink it down from there.
I think that, you know, we feel comfortable with that 100-foot for the staging area where they can start to gather their resources at that particular point, depending on wind shifts and things of that sort. So it all, you know, things change. Fire is an unpredictable, it's unpredictable science, right? Where we think we have one and we have this, but so it's hard for me to give you an actual concrete answer because when you get there, you'll be able to size up. That's what we do when we get to an incident. We size it up and we start making decisions based on what we see and observe and the signs.
I think the fire department could really use some help because we don't know who's gonna be the first responder there, who's gonna be the first person there. We really like to believe it's gonna be the most experienced person there, and it may not be. It may be the people who are out there are just first-year people or whatever else like that. So I think they need to have some idea what the worst-case scenario is, and then they can get closer to it than that. Nobody's gonna be responding to help them out until 15 minutes later or something like that. And nobody's gonna show up there for 4 hours possibly. So I think they need to have some kind of guidance on that, and I think you can give it to them now almost.
It's addressed in the code. It's a requirement that they do annual training. That's something in the code, first time that's ever been done anywhere in the United States where they have annual training, and that is because we know the turnover rate within the volunteers is constant. So we wanted to make sure that as the new people come up that we have that training annually to make sure we cover as many as we can. And that doesn't have to be just for the actual individual fire. We can have the mutual aid companies come in, and that's entirely up to the chief. If they want to bring in the police department, or Office of Emergency Management, planning board people, it's not, it's for the fire department, but it's not restricted.
And responders.
People, yeah, to responders.
Okay, on page 26, it is recommended that a safe perimeter be set up. Again, I'm back to the safe perimeter.
Yeah.
I really think, you know, and I think it may depend on which way the wind's blowing that day. In which case, my question would be, you know, if it's blowing towards the entrance where they're kind of come in, it may be that day it's 200 feet instead of 100 feet or whatever. I think, since they don't know.
It's gonna be a game day decision.
Yes.
And it's hard to nail down that game day. We'd just like to do an initial isolation zone of that 100 feet at least, right, where we have the staging area, and then they can either back it up or move closer based on what they're getting and the size that they're getting.
So you would be comfortable getting out of your rig at 100 feet and saying, hey, I'm good without the equipment on?
Me,
Yeah.
personally? Yeah, I would be, but, you know, if the wind is blowing that way, then yeah, I'm gonna take precautions, yeah.
And so-
If I'm going into the smoke, I mean, who wants to breathe smoke? I was very prudent with my mask. Most people may not be as prudent.
I don't disagree with you. And when I went to the class at the fire training center, certainly one of the things they thought maybe should be here is something like a windsock. Should be on site so that, hey, the fire department will pull up and see whether that windsock's blowing toward them or away from them.
That's fine.
My response may be different.
That's an easy fix.
Of course, now I have to know what it is, but why it's there, but good.
Oh, yeah. Well, they can go into the training.
Yeah.
Under normal conditions, just by the way the site's laid out, prevailing northwest wind would blow largely from the panels, units towards the entrance driveway.
So the way
Is that typical northwest wind?
Pretty much? Yeah, okay.
And if you look at the IWS application, they actually had how often and how fast those winds are. It actually did a pretty good job on winds.
Can I ask a general question, just a couple questions, just to put it in context for me? I mean, we are so far down in the weeds with this discussion that I'm trying to put everything in focus. These batteries are essentially the same batteries that people are sitting on top of in their electric vehicles. They're the same batteries that are mounted on 30% of the population's garage walls since they've been introduced, right? They're a green source of energy, correct? Okay, we know a lot about these batteries, right?
We learned a lot, yes.
If a fire does take place, these aren't some exotic Martian chemicals that are coming off this. This is a general, the smoke and the vapors and the materials that are coming from these fires are the same fumes that are coming off a general house fire where you're gonna have electrical wiring and PVC and metals and asphalt roofing shingles and all this other stuff. If a house burns, you're putting the same vapors in the air as a fire that is coming from these batteries, generally speaking.
I couldn't say it better.
Okay, so it seems like we're trying to micro-analyze the situation because yes, there's more than normal amount of these batteries, but there's tens of thousands of people that sit on these batteries, these same batteries, that have the same risk of explosion and fire. They're sitting on them in their vehicles. You could probably find more of these batteries at a Tesla dealership than what they're gonna be in these containers. Is that a fair statement?
Depending on the amount of cars they have.
Depending on the amount of cars. Let's just say they have.
If it's a repair shop, yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
And all of the chemicals are listed on page 25,
Right.
26.
And they're not exotic chemicals.
No, they're
These are standard batteries.
stuff that we live with.
Stuff that lives here. And if a fire happens, it's stuff that happens in every structural fire.
That's correct.
We're not gonna, you know, we're not gonna get off a fire rig and drop dead from a fume 100 feet away from this thing. That, I mean, we are micro-analyzing this situation for, it seems because we don't have a comfort level that these, I mean, these are not,
I think the applicant has.
these chemicals are not from outer space, they're coming from the earth, right?
And
And
some
they're not-
of the responses are gonna have to be day-to-day decisions, depending upon
Absolutely.
weather conditions.
Depending on weather conditions, depending on who is the incident commander, depending on a lot of things. Right?
And it should be a moment.
All right, I needed to ask to get those questions answered because I'm having trouble ingesting all this micro-analysis. We're sitting on these batteries in our cars. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Nobody else, no, that's okay, but nobody else on the board cares about it, then.
No,
I'll get on that.
It's not about.
We absolutely care.
No one's saying they don't care.
Okay,
I'm
then
not saying
next-
I don't care.
Then, again, page 31, in the event of alarm activation, the following actions should be taken: evacuate the area to a safe location. And so, I'm still coming back, at some point, somebody must have some idea what a safe location is, or what the distance is.
That's the judgment based on the emergency responder, because it depends on the circumstance.
No,
We're
it's-
training for this.
No, it's not, because when that alarm goes off, there are people working out there already, and the question is, how far does TAM have to move their people away?
First of all, what's going on? Just the alarm's going off, or is there a
I don't-
visible fire, or
I
is there?
don't know the answer. I'm reading what's written in this emergency response plan, so I don't know.
I'll answer the question.
Sure.
That's basically, if someone is in there and the alarm goes off, they should know to leave, we're just telling them they need to. That's what we do.
They're within that fenced in area, I
Right.
sure hope
We
they
just
do.
tell them to get out of there. And,
Yeah.
we don't want anyone in there, especially when they have no, person who takes the equipment for that.
So maybe that's the best answer, is if the fenced-in area is a safe area, once you're outside the fenced-in area, you're safe, I can understand that.
Yeah, but that's what we're trying to articulate there, that anyone that may be in there should be leaving the area,
Again, it's gonna be a judgment call by the responding incident commander, right? And he's gonna direct the people that are on site.
Whether they want to stay or not.
Right.
But for the employees that are there that are associated with TAM who are doing sewer and water and that kind of thing, that's a different answer. 15 minutes later, the fire department shows up, and then by that point, it may or may not be an issue, or maybe never mattered.
So what is your question on that?
Some idea of what this safe area is.
We just want you to leave it for the.
Out there, fenced area.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
And we
you.
don't know fire.
That's all for now.
James,
No further comment.
Diana?
I asked all my questions.
Okay. Sean?
So, Mr. Chairman, this comes back to where we started this discussion this evening in terms of seeker. It's my opinion that you don't really have enough to move forward and to authorize the negative declaration, but it's your decision. So I don't know if the applicant is prepared to provide some additional information relative to the seeker items discussed by the board.
Yeah, we can. I guess I just want to talk about process a little bit, because I understand the submission deadline for the November 6th meeting is today, we missed, right? So if we submit the few pieces of outstanding information that you're looking for, because I think we did narrow down the issues, could your consultant come, you know, if in their judgment we address the concerns tonight with a neg deck for the next meeting? Because what we want to try to avoid is missing the whole month of November, which is we make this submission by November 6th, be on the November 20th meeting, we come back, the board goes, yes, we authorize a neg deck, which then wouldn't be ready until sometime in December. So what I'm getting at is the board comfortable with kind of like a conditional authorization? If we meet the requirements that you're looking for tonight, that at the November 20th meeting, there might be a neg deck ready for us to look at.
I can give some insight on this. I think you're going to want to hear from council on this. So you recall that it has a subdivision component to it, right? So as the board is aware, you're going to have to actually have that negative deck in place before you open the public hearing, right? So I would say you need to be in a position where you're comfortable authorizing drafting of a neg deck before you schedule a public hearing.
Right. We had a number of issues, without getting into the nitty-gritty of it. There were still some issues that needed to be addressed, like the noise issues and some of the others that were mentioned. I believe we need some sort of narrative, for sure, you know, explaining some of these items that were raised today, before we'd be in a position to give a neg deck. We don't have to regurgitate everything. Obviously, not everything has to be done to determine whether it reaches the status of a neg deck. You know, some of that stuff will still be evolving as the plans get developed and stuff like that, finalized, I should say. And there'll be other comments that will come out during the public hearing, I'm sure. But there are certain issues that were addressed tonight that need to be considered and then prepared for our review. To answer some of those questions, not so much the details of the emergency plan. Some of it can be, some of it, you know, is readily available, some of it's not, as we exhaustively discussed tonight. But some of the environmental issues, you know, talking about the variances that were granted and justification for that, and the adequacy of the buffer zone, whether it's wooded fully or if it just has trees on it, does that satisfy a wooded 100-foot buffer? You know, items like that, we just need to have some clarity on that. The issue of the noise, or when the sensors, you know, where the noise was taken, the levels, there were some questions that were raised on that. You know, items like that we would need to see. And then I think at that point, we'd be prepared to vote on whether a neg deck would be appropriate.
Yeah, and we were just really looking for the opportunity, you know, at the November 20th meeting for that to occur, because as Sean mentioned, everything's getting pushed off until we get the neg deck, because we do need the subdivision approval, and of course, if it's prepared and there's further information requested at that meeting, we would enact on the neg deck, and we would need to supplement.
But that's inconsistent with what you were asking, right? So you're asking for a joint public hearing.
Well, we understand that was a request from the town, which.
But you have requested that in written communication to at least my office. Right. So that, you're still requesting that, correct? Or are you requesting multiple public hearings?
No, we're still requesting a joint public hearing, but we understand you can't schedule the hearing until you have the neg deck. So right now, I am just talking about the neg deck, not the joint public hearing, because based on the discussion tonight, we've picked up that that goalpost is being moved up
Sure.
until
I don't
December.
think the goalpost is being moved, I just think you fell short of the goal.
Right. Well,
So-
you were asking for November, so now using what you.
Just because you asked doesn't mean that you satisfy the requirement. You've heard from the board, you haven't satisfied the requirement. I think you need to go back and resubmit a portion of the expanded part 3. And at that point, the board authorizes preparation of neg deck, then they're in a position to schedule a public hearing.
Look, a number of questions were raised tonight about noise, about the emergency response plan, about ingress and egress, because the lot is being used by 2 different companies. Answer the questions that we put out to you.
One of the other questions, I guess, that was raised early on in the conversation was the justification by the utility company for the need for 8 poles. So we went from 12 to 8, which is great, heading in the right direction. But do they truly require 8, or is that 8 poles that you'd like to see? You know, we need
I can answer
something
that
from
question.
utility.
Yeah, I mean, I can provide, the utility study, we have our utility studies back, which confirm that we can connect and issued an upgrade cost to us, what that would be, based on a preliminary design that the utility company is saying that they would like to see, which is the 8-pole design. It's not a design that is, like, it's a sketch.
No, so I'm saying, if they want to see 8 poles, and that's what's required on their part, then we would comply with that, but we need something from them saying that the 8 poles are necessary, as opposed to having 6 poles and more underground cable or whatever. You know, there's certain equipment that has to go on the poles, we understand that. So it's just a matter of getting something from the utility company saying, yeah, 8 poles is what we'd like to see for the 2 units.
Yeah, it's a challenge to get from the utility a confirmation of the design, even though we know what they studied, until we actually are at the point where they're going to construction design work.
Which is
typically
contrary to what we look for.
Which is typically further down the line from their perspective. What I know from a follow-up conversation with them based on the studies they provided, and I have what amounts to a sketch that they provided, which we can submit.
I mean, there's something from the utility company, certainly, I mean.
Which is
you
gonna
know,
roughly look like.
The number of poles is something we consider as far as a visual assessment. You know, no different than a solar farm. You know, we look at how many poles are there because they're there. I mean, you're seeing those every bit as much as you see everything else between the poles and the wires and string. So, you know, that's part of the environmental review that we would do before we would give a neg deck.
We did a visual simulation, I believe, showing the 12 poles. Normally 6 poles each system is what the utility requires, which is why we initially went with that visual simulation. So when we look at the visual simulation now, we'd be subtracting 4 poles from that visual simulation.
And the other thing that Sean had mentioned earlier on, way earlier on, was the visual from the Heritage Trail. Looking back into the parcel, looking at those enclosures and the fencing and everything like that. What are we seeing? What's obstructed by the TAM buildings that might be in the way? Looking at the topography, you know, the heritage trails are at a lower elevation. You know, we're looking up the hill towards where the enclosures are. You know, I mean, just between the enclosures and the back of the buildings, I think there's like a 10th of grade. I don't know. It keeps dropping down as you get towards the heritage trail. But, you know, we'd want to see a couple shots that way too, to say, yes, there is an impact, significant impact, no, there's not a significant impact as far as visibility.
In terms of the fact that we moved the batteries over, because our initial simulations did show, I think, where the batteries would be roughly located.
Sure.
I don't recall the initial simulation, I'm sorry.
I think we've moved them though, right? Correct, Travis?
They were moved this way.
Yeah, we moved them towards the west, but it's still the same distance from the trail. And so in essence, obstructed more so now by the buildings that are there or any existing foliage. you know, we'd want to see, you know, if there was a meaningful deviation as far as the visibility.
Okay.
And there's a lot of bulk.
So an updated visual simulation?
Exactly. Yeah, there's a fair amount of bulk to the 6 units.
Yeah.
2 of them which are facing the Heritage Trail.
Behind the structures, towards the rear, but I understand you want to see that from a SEQA perspective. And I understand the questions that came up on noise, those are the 2 that are sticking out, mostly in my mind here, but we've taken notes. So, yeah, I understand, I hear the, I mean, it sounds to me like, if we prepare the submissions that ultimately are satisfactory in terms of moving forward on the night deck, then at least even if the night deck is not ruled on at that next meeting,
We could
public
authorize
hearing
the
could be,
preparation.
public hearing could be, at that point, we could begin to,
I think if the board is in a position to authorize preparation of the next deck, they've also been in a position to schedule a public hearing.
Schedule a public
With the
hearing.
understanding that before the public hearing is open, they would take action on it. But right now, they don't have anything concrete to say, yeah, we're comfortable, you know, with authorizing a night deck.
well, I've heard that they want certain, specific details to be answered in order to do that.
Right.
Okay. We appreciate how thorough, and I get it. First batteries in Goshen.
Thank you for all the input.
Yeah, thank you.
Good?
Yeah.
She sat down midway.
Been a long time.
You've been standing.
That's why I had the baby swing going. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I know.
Quite a ball game, you
They should have did him first.
Are we ready to proceed? Next item on the agenda.
Can we stretch?
101 River Road Project LLC, formerly known as Amy's Kitchen, 12-1-23.22 and 120. We have an application for amended site plan, special permit for a warehouse on 95.198 plus or minus acres, total holdings along New York State Route 17M, River Road and Hartley Road, in an I-zone with an AQ3, AQ6 floodplain ponding area, stream corridor, and water supply watershed overlays. We're here this evening for an initial presentation to begin the secret process. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Justin Ferrazano, Senior Project Manager with Colliers, on behalf of the applicant, 101 River Road Project LLC. So just a general intro of the project tonight. This is, as you mentioned, is formerly known as Amy's Kitchen. It was approved as a 369,000 square foot manufacturing, conference, and distribution facility. It received the POS deck in 2014. And then went through the EIS process, ending with an FEIS at the end of 2016. The site's partially constructed. Most of the site is cleared. some of the parking areas are based out and formed out. It's almost pad ready, I call it. What the applicant is proposing to do is take ownership of the property, maintain almost everything you see as far as disturbance limits. We're actually proposing a smaller building, so instead of 369,000, we're proposing 307,440 square feet of warehouse space. We're decreasing the parking spaces, so this large lot up here was previously proposed as all passenger parking that was needed for the manufacturing aspect of the facility. We no longer need that large amount of parking. So we're trimming the building down to 360-foot depth, putting the passenger parking that we need along the back there. And then this large area would be for trailer storage. Now, we're proposing that as a bank, so if needed by the tenant, it would be constructed and used. If not, it won't be. So there's a large decrease of passenger parking, 457 space decrease. There's 172 trailer spaces replacing that. There's a decrease of impervious. In general, we feel across the board that the project is less intense, but maintains all the things that were granted through the special use permit, through the EIS process. All the studies are still valid. So we do feel it's consistent with the special use permit and not a substantial change, but actually a pretty substantial decrease in impact. So that's all I have. Shorter than the last one. Can't wait. So here to hear any questions. We'd love to, as mentioned in the Tully review letter, if the board finds so, we'd like to proceed as I mentioned with the. Let me quote them. So. If the board finds so, we'd like to proceed with the proposed amendment consistent with the terms of the special use permit and not a substantial change. Therefore, heading down the path of granting the amendment without going through the public hearing process.
I've got a couple questions for you.
Sure.
Regarding the paperwork that was provided.
Yes, we've submitted a narrative summary.
No, I know you submitted, I've got it here.
Okay.
I've got questions on that.
Sure.
For the wastewater treatment facilities, we're saying wastewater to be used, Village of Goshen wastewater treatment plant. Yet, on the plans themselves, it says discharge to the city of Middletown wastewater.
I believe it's city of Middletown.
Because that's what it was for Ames.
Yeah, it's all consistent, so.
And then for the water, it says the Orange County Water District. What is the Orange County Water District?
That could be a typo.
And
that should all be consistent with the Ames approval.
Okay.
So are you referring to the EIS?
I'm looking at the EAF.
The EAF, okay.
Part 1 EAF. Hours of construction, 7 a.m. is not consistent with the town requirements. It's, I believe, an 8 o'clock start. On all the information, I understand you're taking a lot of this from Ames, but as far as the land use, current acreage, change of, after the project is completed, everything says TBD. I mean, we've changed the plan, we've modified certain aspects of it. There should be some real values in this table. You know, whether it's significant or not, it should be there. All the information on the drainage of the property, topography, everything says TBD, and that's not helpful for us. I think it's gonna need to go back over that and just fill in blanks. Do we have any idea what the use of the distribution center is, or is it going to just be another warehouse on spec?
Yeah, warehouse sounds fine.
Okay. Sean,
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Are you looking for technical comments?
please.
Okay. So, as the applicant indicated, this is amended special permit and site plan. There was some discussion about whether it's consistency and whether it's a substantial change. You recall, whenever you get applications like this and there's a special permit involved, there's an analysis that you need to go through. First part of the analysis is a special permit, and that's whether it's consistent with the special permit. Second part is whether it is a substantial change from the site plan. So there's three different outcomes under your code. If it's consistent with the special permit and it's not a substantial change, you're required to grant an approval without a hearing. If it is consistent with the special permit and a substantial change, you follow the site plan review procedure. If it's inconsistent with the special permit, you follow the special permit procedure. So the first part of your analysis is to pick which door we kind of go down. Some additional follow-up questions I had, the applicant got into a lot of them. Just wanted to point out that the original approval was for River Road and 17. Your proposal, was Echo Lake Road and Hartley Road. I don't think you have frontage on Echo Lake, but Hartley Road in the original application was only supposed to be used in emergency. So, yeah, but it's, I'm referring back to your comparison table where you had said that you'd be accessing the site through Hartley. That wasn't part of the original approval.
That's gonna impact the Hartley 17M interchange.
Well, yes, if the applicant wanted to do that, it doesn't mean that they're restricted from that, they just have to study that, they have to.
Right, that's what I'm saying, because that wasn't studied for Amy's in that regard.
Correct, that's right. Some other things, you mentioned there may be a variance, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So would we, if we limited to the access to this one, would that?
Yes, yeah, right now Amy's was approved to go over that bridge that you just pointed to
Right.
and utilize what's known as River Road, which, and in fact, there was a developer's agreement where the maintenance of River Road would be shared. I don't remember the specifics of that agreement, but I'm pretty sure that it transfers to whoever buys this facility ultimately.
Okay.
So even if you were to, let's say, get approval for using Hartley, you'd still be responsible for maintaining the river.
Yeah, and Hartley, for that kind of truck traffic,
Yeah.
heading in either direction, towards 17 or towards 17M, wasn't designed for that kind of loading.
There was a reason Amy's Kitchen built a bridge over the Walk Road.
Yep, not because they had excess money.
That's correct.
But, I'm sorry, did I say that we would be accessing through Hartley?
I think
The documentation says it.
Is it the EAF again?
Yeah.
Because I have my narrative, entrance and egress into the subject site will remain provided via a driveway to Echo Lake Road.
Yeah, you don't have frontage on Echo Lake Road.
Oh, so I think that's probably a typo there. Gotcha. River Road.
It would have to be River Road. if it's
River
not
Road,
Hartley.
that should probably be River Road. Yeah.
Just some other real quick things from the board. The applicant indicated there's a reduction in the parking. The code requires, it has two different, it has a use criteria, which you indicated you need a variance to meet. There's also a employee criteria. You said you had 75 employees, but 174 spots proposed or something like that. So I don't know if there's multiple shifts or anything like that. There was, in the secret mitigations, there was a requirement to have the parking towards the internal of the site and to reduce visual impacts from Parkway Road. So that would need to be looked at if we're going to move that parking.
If we screen it, right? With the screen along here.
Yeah, you would need to have some sort of screening, but also there's requirements in terms of, you might have heard the first application or second application about breaking up the parking with islands and
Islands,
landscaping.
yeah, I did.
You already discussed the water and the sewer, trailer storage and loading bays. So Amy's Kitchen had 18 trailer storage spots, and they had between 20 and 30 loading docks. I couldn't determine the number of loading docks, or if you were gonna be consistent with Amy's and only have 20 to 30.
We'd probably look to increase that.
We're only showing 6. in the
There's six,
upper
there's six,
west-
trucks,
northwest
but
corner.
Yeah, I didn't think that was logical for.
No.
Yeah.
All these dotted lines.
Lee, can I just make the comment that it's a significant change between a manufacturing operation and a warehousing operation? I just think that the traffic study that Amy's provided us is just not gonna be sufficient for this application.
This should be a reduction to that, though.
Yeah, but this is going from 18 tractor trailers to 162. So the nature of this
Yeah, but
traffic is completely changed.
The nature of the
I
traffic
agree,
is-
that was one of my recommendations, is the new traffic study.
we could provide a traffic statement to show that it'll be overall a lower impact.
It's impossible.
That might be a tough sell.
How would you do that if you're
Well,
building?
it's twice as many passenger vehicles to have, so overall it'll be,
But you still have the trucks coming in and out.
right,
You know, whether they come in with their own truck and leave with their own truck, it's still a trip. If they're
correct,
coming in with a car and picking up a truck, it's a trip.
right.
There's a lot of trailer storage. How can it be less than 18?
Yeah, those, it's all based on the square footage of the building, though.
But not, the traffic's not.
The trips are, yes. Traffic trips are based on the square footage of the
Yeah,
building.
but also based on the use. So
Right.
if it was a manufacturing facility with 18 bays, or let's say 30 bays,
Correct,
and now it's gonna go to a warehouse distribution center with an unknown number of loading bays, it's apples to oranges.
right.
Yes,
But
the square footage of that structure comes into play, but there's also other things that come into play.
Of course, yeah.
Particularly, like you mentioned, the building's being built on spec. So
Right.
we don't even know what the tenant is or what type of impact or
Right,
demand they're gonna have as far as the vehicles. I mean, you might have plenty of parking spaces, but if they're, fully occupying that warehouse and sending, 2-3 shifts and just sending trucks back and forth all day and all night, it's a whole lot different than Amy's
Well, if that's,
demand.
if that's at full capacity, would the traffic study be designed as if it was full? And
Well, that's what I'm saying,
if
if you
it's all
have,
by square footage, that's how many tractor trailers going in and out, so.
And just to make a point about use, like in previous RDM applications, we had asked questions around, could it be last mile? Are there even more intensive warehouse uses than sort of I forget what it is,
IT.
140?
Oh, right.
Or 150?
Right.
And I think in all of those cases, or at least in the first case, the applicant assured us that the way that the building was being constructed made it impossible to be a last mile distribution center.
Mhm.
I don't know that we have those commitments at this point. I think the fact that there was limited cargo traffic, or I'm sorry, limited cargo parking made it difficult to be used as a last mile distribution center. The fact that there are now 162 banked trailer storage spaces, which could be 300 banked van storage spaces for as far as we know, I think makes it more complicated for us to assume this is not last mile. So I think we need to get some confidence in terms of the traffic that, like, this isn't gonna be last mile, this is gonna have some limitations. And to that end, can you talk about why there is all this trailer storage which may or may not be used? Like, what would a tenant typically use that for? Because we haven't seen that in applications.
Well, I think the idea was to try and maintain as much of the design as possible. So this parking lot was approved and is almost fully constructed. So all we did was take that parking lot that was part of the approval from Amy's, take out the passenger spaces and replace it with the potential for trailer. You said, right, to the same point, 162 might go there, 0 might go there, so 20 might go there. It's,
Okay, I guess that your interest in not changing the site too much is commendable. The
Right.
problem is, I think it conflicts, at least in my mind, with, our assurance that it won't be a much more high intensity use than a regular warehouse.
okay.
Particularly because we also don't know what the bays look like, if the bays are for tractor trailers or for vans, like, it.
I got a question.
Sure.
You mentioned before that the typical design is based on square footage of a building, right?
Yes.
Is that directly proportional to the trailer spaces? Like if you have such large of a building, you have so many spaces. Is that for tractor trailers? Is that
No, that's
Right.
usually,
Just personnel.
for the trailer storage is tenant driven, no, that's not. It's not like, if I have 300,000, I need 150. In this case, it was literally, this is the size of the parking lot, so we struck different trailer spaces. If that was a sticking point, I think I would be able to go back. I'm not gonna speak for the applicant, but I bet if I went back and said, this is the main issue, how about we drop it down to 100? I think they'd probably say fine. I think it was literally just maintain all the disturbance, it's already constructed, just go out there and stripe it differently. That was the mindset. It wasn't, we need 162 because it's 300, anything like that.
And when it was Amy's also, as car parking, I mean, if it was employees, they would come in, be there for a full shift before the car goes out, typically.
Mhm.
If there's tractor trailers, they could be moving in and out every, 4 hours, it could be a run somewhere.
Right.
And so there definitely could be more intense traffic, even
I mean,
with the same size footprint.
I'm not at all opposed to providing a traffic statement or study to show the comparison between the two.
No, we need a study, because 17M is a mess. And you're gonna be coming out on 17M. So-
I'm pretty sure my firm did the original Amy's traffic study, so.
Yeah, but Amy's was a manufacturing, and
I
this is a
understand.
warehouse, and you don't even know who the warehouse is going to be leased to.
Right, so because of that, we have to use the standards and the spec design.
So we need more of a study than a statement.
Sure.
Maybe inspect, but assume worst case.
Of course,
Yeah.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
In prior applications from this applicant, they described what they were building as a modern warehouse, that's what they typically called it.
Yeah,
I noticed that this is a warehouse distribution center, is that a difference?
no.
Okay.
You mean as far as like visual?
I mean, does a modern warehouse, which they've applied for in the past, and we approved one, mean anything different than warehouse distribution center, which is what you're calling this?
I don't believe so. Yeah, they like, the client likes to have a modern, attractive look to the building. You mean as far as like the inner workings of the building?
Yeah, I'm talking about
No, I
this.
don't
Like,
think
there's no conveyors in there or something like
No.
that, bring it in?
Just standard warehouse, yeah.
With this, the bulk of this building, would they have to have the in and outs, breaking up the facade?
Yes, so understanding that the applicant is looking to utilize as much of the prior approvals as possible, and that this board had gone through a very in-depth environmental impact review, there are certain areas that will change traffic, as you just discussed. There's also other areas that you had made conclusions on based on the zoning and based on the environmental impact studies and everything else. In my comments to you, which you haven't received a copy, I tried to point out a lot of those that they may need to go back and readdress, and that was one of the items, Mr. Chairman, that you had talked about in your approvals. So you analyzed what that building would look like, you talked about landscaping from Parkway Road. If the applicant's wishing to build on those approvals or utilize those approvals, then they need to meet those conditions. If they can't meet those conditions, then they need to come back to you and reevaluate.
The other thing is like, the water's coming from Middletown still, I presume?
Just heard that tonight, yes.
Has there been conversation with Middletown as far as just the amount of water that's not gonna be used compared to what Amy's was intending to use? Has that impacted all their offer to provide the water supply? I mean, the warehouse is not gonna use a fraction of what food production does.
Would they have a problem supplying less water to us?
Well, there's other issues, I didn't mean to interrupt, Mr. Chairman, but if you size a line, right, for whatever, 300,000 gallons a day, I think that was what Ian's talking about, because you're making soup or producing food, and now you're using a very small fraction of that.
Right.
That water sits in that
Stagnation.
line, and you have water quality issues, you could have issues in terms of byproducts being produced in the line and things like that. Is that what you were getting to, Mr. Chairman?
Exactly.
Okay.
How about the sewer plant? I remember when it was Amy's, and you don't have enough, doesn't work properly. So does this also make,
No, probably not. If I recall, Amy's, they were worried about the strength of the wastewater, right? So as they're producing these things, there's very strong, high-strength wastewater coming off before it gets sent out to Middletown for treatment. Essentially, that plant that was gonna be at the Amy Center was a pre-treatment plant. They're gonna knock down the strength, and then they were gonna force force main it over to Middletown for final treatment. This is just regular
This
domestic.
plan said it was gonna be eliminated.
Yeah.
Other comments from the board?
Just one, I think it's typo. In your EAF, it says that there's no scenic resources within, this is probably what he was pointing out. No scenic resources within 5 miles. The Amy's EAF indicated the Heritage Trail was one.
Take a look at that.
It's literally right there.
I've got an issue with the owner's endorsement. Says the owner resides at P.O. Box 351 Muncie, the County of Bergen, New Jersey. P.O. Box isn't a residence and Muncie's not in Bergen.
That's correct, I live in Bergen.
They,
Maybe that's why that's on there.
There was an issue with the owner's endorsement. I just want to give the board some background. So I think the applicant was confused about the owner's endorsement. I think they thought it was an applicant's endorsement, meaning that this professional can come on behalf of the applicant, right? So that, I believe, is completed by the applicant, although it's incorrect. We pointed that out, and just this week we received an email, Grace received it from Amy's counsel, that said that they were consenting to this application.
Amy's counsel is the owner.
Yeah, Amy's Kitchen, through LLCs, still owns this site.
The owner's endorsement is still required, right? The email doesn't suffice.
I defer to council on that, but I think eventually we can get that. We just, in terms of getting them on this agenda this evening, if they didn't have anything from the owner, and, you know, then they shouldn't really be on the agenda.
Other comments? So how shall we proceed?
I think you can probably declare your intent to be lead agency. And
Type it as,
you would type it the same as you type Amy's, I believe, and I'd have to look back and see what that was, but I think ultimately where this is going in terms of seeker is they're gonna look to make a consistency, presentation. So they're gonna go through everything that was involved in terms of your environmental impact review for Amy's. And then look for you to say that it was consistent with your prior findings.
now, with Amy's, we had FEIS. With this, if we have an issue, obviously like traffic or something like that, can they, without doing a FEIS, would you be doing a supplemental or partial free, or how would they
Yeah,
handle it?
they could, yes, they could. That's a good question, Mr. Chairman. So let's just say for things like endangered species, right? The site hasn't really changed, there's probably less impact to potential endangered species on site. That they wouldn't need to do another site for, right? They could build on a number of the sites. However, for traffic, you may want to have them have that additional study, as you said tonight, and then it would be sort of like an expanded Part 3 process, where they're just providing a small. You wouldn't
So they
go
can
through
do that
scoping
and
and-
build
yeah.
off of the FEIS?
Correct, yeah, you don't need to go through scoping and all that stuff again.
Good. Well, can I have a motion to declare this board's intent to be a lead agency? Phil, second by? Diana, all in favor, say aye. And could I have a motion to declare this project typed in the same way that we typed Amy's Kitchen? Type 1, as a type 1 action.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, Marty, second by? Seamus, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Well, Justin, I think that's what we could do for you tonight.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is Owens Road Solar, 10-1-10.22. An application for amended site plan approval for solar energy system on 126.6 plus or minus acres along Owens Road in the RU zone with an AQ6, AQ3, scenic road corridor, floodplain, ponding, street corridor, and water supply watershed overlays. And we're here tonight for initial presentation to commence SECRA on some modifications. Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. John Herman from Couchways for the applicant. I'm gonna try to go fast since everyone's had a long night, and I think this one's pretty straightforward, but if I don't give enough detail or anything, please let me know. So I know most of you have seen this one before. I received last year for a minor modification to a condition 5 around getting a building permit, and the Army Corps wetland mitigation. So the projects are mostly constructed, and we were doing the tree mitigation areas, and the contractor and I think Frank had a discussion that one of the original locations for the tree mitigation planting area would not be conducive to planting anything there. It has a pretty dense, mature canopy, and it was pretty well shaded, so I think everyone agreed that that location wouldn't work. So we provided a couple other locations, one along the Hammerhead on the access road. There's probably, I think, 30 trees there, and then 2 other locations where there's gonna be tree plantings. Everything stays the same, just the location changes, the species, the number of trees are all staying the same. I did have a minor typo in my letter. It says 20%, I should have said 15%. I'm not gonna reiterate what Sean just went over for the previous
The
application.
15% is the mortality rate? Is that referred to?
That's the excess that we're planting for potential mortality.
Okay.
So we're required to have 1,300 and change, and we're proposing just over 1,600. As I was saying, Sean went over in detail last application about minor changes to the site plan when there's a special use permit, so I won't really go over that unless there's any question. But from our perspective, it's a minor change consistent with this prior special use permit, and we could proceed without a hearing. As I've mentioned, we've been here a couple times with some minor changes, and we received 2 amendments, I believe, since this project was approved. Neither of those amendments required referral again for GNL 239. Again, it would be my position, very minor change here, not really changing anything to the site, just where we're doing the tree planting, that it wouldn't require 239 referral again. And lastly, seeker, again, my opinion, you have counsel and also Sean, I think this would be consistent with the prior net deck that can be included in a resolution.
We were talking how many trees are actually being displaced to a different location?
So total planting is, or do you want to know the change?
Just the number that we're not putting in location A, that we're moving to location B, so to speak.
Oh,
You know, that we're keeping apples to apples, but we're moving them to a different location.
I have to do math.
Ballpark.
3. I would say a bulk of them.
I'm sorry?
I would say the bulk of them.
The bulk of what?
The bulk of the 1,600.
Wait, you lost me on that one. I don't think that answered the question I had.
So I have about 1,100, 1,200
Being moved?
are being planted in a different location than originally proposed.
About 1,200.
Why?
It's not insubstantial.
No, you know, I was thinking of a much smaller number, would be a field change, but 1,200 trees is not a field change.
This is why it's here, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
So,
I was trying to be nice, you know.
if you look at Exhibit 1 to the report. It was originally planned to pack most of these trees in there, based on the spacing, I think was about 6.5 feet apart. But if you look at that aerial, it's a forest. I'm frankly, I wasn't involved in the original application, I don't know why this area was proposed.
And that exhibit 1, that area is highlighted in blue, that would represent about 1,100 trees spaced 6 feet apart. Is that many trees were proposed in that area?
That's my understanding.
Yeah, there's a plan schedule on the aerial, broken down by area. I think it sums to 1,208 trees were intended for area 1.
So at this point, nothing's going in area 1?
I think the
Is
applicant
that the plan?
walk you through.
Yes,
And-
because if we were to plant trees there, we'd have to cut the trees down that were there and then plant more trees.
So now they're putting it in 2 general areas. Are you able to show the board so they?
What's these 2 orange?
Yes, so
That-
that larger orange on the left is the area that they can't plant.
Right, that's area 1.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's the area where it was originally proposed. So if you flip to this sheet, I know it's not a very good exhibit. So there is this area here.
That kidney shaped area?
Yes, so this area here next to the wetland, this area down here, and then a small number over here.
What is that? How many trees are going in this area?
I think that's the about 1,100 change
This one?
in this southern area.
Okay, good, okay.
Looks like there's a house over here, I'm not sure.
It's not on this plan, so I'm not sure.
Yeah. What is the green and show?
The green on this plan, I think it's noted as a grass area.
Grass, that's correct.
Yeah.
Where is the change?
So there's a planting area here, there's gonna be 2 rows, another area down here, and a small area over here by the access road hammerhead.
This is where we were.
Those were already gonna go there. They go down here.
When we did the visuals on this show, the location where they were intending to put area 1, 1,100, that area in the visuals showed that it needed it?
No, it wasn't that it needed, Mr. Chairman. The board was trying to do the one-on-one replacement.
So they were just trying to find places to place
They're
it?
trying to find places to place it. When you did the visuals, you were more concerned with the front corner
Right.
of the site because it's in a scenic road, as well as the driveways and the impact to the residential. Everything, let's say, closer to Owens Road. This was not, as far as I can recall, rendered or studied visually. It's just to have space for planting.
So where we're planting the trees now provides better buffer? Yeah, the word I was looking for, thank you.
Yes, yeah, it's right on the property line, yeah, it probably does.
It's only a benefit.
Yeah.
And there is no detriment to the panels themselves as far as shading.
That's my understanding. That was part of the calculus for
Or
selecting
where
these
they selected
areas,
to place them.
given the site constraints with wetlands, et cetera.
If you look really carefully at the proposed plan, this is very hard to see. It talks about maximum.
Yes.
And that's, I had to call John and ask him what that meant, and I think he called his landscape architect, I've never seen that before, and I think that's maximum relative to impact on the panels. Right, so the applicant's concerned about impacting the panels. So they're saying that if you plant in these trees in those areas, as long as they're under this height, it will not impact the panels.
Under this height as in over time or?
Yeah,
initial?
I'm sorry, I can't read it, but I recall one was like 70 feet max.
Yeah.
And this.
Okay.
So essentially,
So its life expectancy, where they're being placed, would not be shading the panels, you're trying to say?
correct. It's my understanding that,
Species.
as Sean noted, there's this height max, so the expected maturity height of the trees. That's why they were selected for their location as
So
you
we're
get
not gonna be
closer.
going in there pruning the tops of the trees 20 years later.
Correct, that's why when you look like this southern area, for instance, the closest row, excuse me, to the arrays is cedar, and, you know,
Right.
it's anticipated only to get 30 feet tall, so that avoids the trimming.
Okay. Yeah, no, I see it on here. Yeah. And brown.
Yeah, he's got great color.
It's very difficult to see. Under it.
He's not 51 yet. I know.
39.
He can see, we can't. We gotta zoom in.
39 and holding.
So, as John indicates, the same type of analysis, right? So special permit and site plan, presume that the board would determine that it's consistent with the original special permit. In terms of the site plan, it's whether it is substantially, or whether it's substantial change or not. If you don't think this is a quote-unquote substantial change, then it would be no public hearing, and we move right to authorize a resolution. And I think you did that on your last two for this application. I leave to council whether it requires a GML and whether you're required to do anything else with secret.
And council believes what?
I'll have to look into it. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. I'd poll the board, see how everyone feels. Phil?
Well, I think that you would be better served with the method we can read.
Okay, a better map.
Yes.
So, I have this, Phil, if it helps. I didn't think it was, very professional, so I didn't wanna use this, but it is a little easier to read. I can hand it out to everyone. It looks like, it's not stamped or anything, that's why I didn't wanna use it if anyone wants to.
I'll take 3 of them.
Suitable for framing. Well, this map, what does it quantify as how many it only reached?
Yeah, it's just
As opposed to just.
not stamped, so I didn't wanna ask anyone to rely on
Okay, now that we have a map.
What are, by the way, Lee, what are the choices that you're asking us to?
Whether we could proceed with this, assuming, well, besides, regardless of the GML, to the county request, but can this be just a modified conditional approval? You know, given the change in the positioning of these trees, like we're utilizing the same number of them, just placing different.
We're relocating, you said 1,200 trees?
I think it's about 1,200,
From an area where they had no benefit, apparently.
They were gonna be in the woods. They're gonna have a hard time fitting them in there.
Planting trees in the woods.
Except they're boring holes through everyone's roots, you know, that's what happens.
The original narrative, described that one planting area as it just needed some brushing and grubbing. I think we can all agree that does not appear to be accurate.
No.
I could start with Diana if you prefer.
Let's start with Diana.
Okay, we'll do that for a change. Diana? It was Phil's idea.
Well, you can't grow them in a forest, that's for sure, so if this area is empty here and it's gonna be the same amount of trees, then I don't see there's a problem to move them.
Sean? Chiefs?
Okay.
You
I
agree?
think we should, well, we should put the trees in the background.
Where they actually serve a purpose.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, the fact that it's not stamped doesn't matter to me as long as this plan gets followed.
Oh, yeah, so they'll follow the one that was in the report
That'd just be a bigger sheet of paper.
Yeah, it's just not the most legible, that's why I brought that.
That was a good idea.
I think it makes the project better, I mean, it doesn't make any sense, and I don't think it's that big of a change.
It's a minor change.
But back to you, Phil.
Okay. Now, I do have a question.
Oh, no.
I will do my best to answer it.
You wrote that the neighbor, there are several, right?
Yes.
An additional 30 trees, pin oaks and maples will be planted on the property line for additional screening?
Yes, so that's,
Why would we do deciduous trees if the neighbor wants a buffer?
I would assume they selected trees based on potential survivability, I'm not sure, or if, that's the landscape architect's question.
Is this something that the neighbor agreed to?
This is something I think that was proposed to the neighbor in an effort to be neighborly, yes. The extent of my knowledge on it is that there was a conversation, they said, hey, what would you think if we planted some more trees over here to help you not see things?
Maybe they'll fall color.
It could be, if you did have plantings there, this isn't just the only plantings there, it could be just to soften perhaps a
Alright.
heavy evergreen, I don't.
Mr. Neighbor's happy, I'm happy.
Pin oaks also provide food for deer and
That's just what we
turkeys.
need.
And, you know, the conifers don't provide anything, so maybe that was part of the reasoning.
Okay. So the next step is to determine whether,
I don't think you need to have that determination, you could actually authorize a resolution, and that determination could be made before, and if it does need to go over GML, we would just, defer.
delay. In which case, can I have a motion then to authorize council to prepare a revised conditional resolution of approval? I don't know if it's number 3 or what it is. Was it?
Number 3.
It is 3, okay, good.
I'll place the motion.
Diana, second by?
I'll second.
Marty, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
You as well.
Thank
That's right. Yeah, they love it. They love them. Sean?
So, next meeting, your next meeting has, Lebanon Warehouse, which you heard, that's the resolution. You have the resolution that you just authorized. The warehouses, 2659 and 2675, as well as Salamone Concrete. That, in anticipation of the crowd, that's gonna be moved to the 911 center. I believe Grace, you've already confirmed that?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, so just make a note, don't come here, go to the 911 center.
Beautiful. Salamone, what are they coming back with? Is it changed, or are they just moving forward?
My understanding is that they have a revised position relative to the requirement for a left turn and a revised mitigation. We spoke briefly with John Canning today during the staff meeting about that.
Okay.
And because it's traffic centered, Mr. Chairman, you're gonna want Mr. Canning at that meeting, correct?
I would say so.
Okay.
Concrete trucks don't move too quickly. Meeting still the same time, 7:30?
7:30.
Same time, yeah.
Okay.
I had the same time.
Anything from the board? Not, can I have a motion to close the meeting?
I'll make the motion.
Marty, second by. Eric, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Have a good night.
Thank you.